Good evening, everybody. We are so excited to have you here, engaged in our public process. We're gonna ask you to settle down a little bit so we can get started. Good evening, I'm Maggie Stakeley, and thank you for coming to the NTRAC tonight. So we're gonna call the meeting to order, and we're gonna start with our MAC member introductions, and I'll send it down to Rebecca. Rebecca McFadden, Tahoe City.
Gerald Herrick, 1 mile in Placer County from the Truckee town limits.
Russ Hampson, Tahoe West Shore.
Megan Shalini, Kings Beach.
And then Caitlin, do we have folks online as well?
We do.
Hi, Nicole Lutz-Kamiller, Tahoe City.
Welcome, Nicole. And again, my name is Maggie Stakeley, and I'm here in Kings Beach. The first item on our agenda today is approval of the November 9th agenda tonight. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed or abstentions? Not hearing any? All right, agenda approved. The next item on our agenda is approval of the October 13th meeting minutes. Can someone make a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
I move to approve the October 13th, 2022 minutes.
Thank you, Megan.
I'll second.
Thank you, Rebecca. All in favor of approval of the October 13th meeting minutes, say aye.
Aye.
And I heard everyone's voice, so no, I think abstentions or nays. So then we will move into reports, starting with community reports.
That's you, Paul.
And before Paul starts, I just want to let everybody know just some IT information tonight. So this little friendly owl on the table is our microphone tonight. So for all MAC members, community members, as long as the owl can hear you, the people online can hear you. So just think about that when you speak. Take it.
No one has ever complained about the inability to hear me. Ask my wife. Hi, I'm Paul Long. First of all, thank you, Supervisor Gustafson. Thank you to the committee. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I am Paul Long. I'm the lieutenant for the Sheriff's Office station in Burton Creek, and just here tonight to very brief community report and available for any questions that anyone might have. So just to throw out some numbers at you, in the last month in the jurisdiction in the area of this community meeting, there's been 555 calls for service, 6 arrests, 2 citations. Most of the arrests looks like they're for property crimes, which is typical for this time of year, which just means thefts and burglaries. That kind of closes out as much as we can say about that. There really aren't any significant crime trends occurring that are unusual. Obviously, theft is a low-level problem everywhere that humans congregate, so that continues here. The only other thing I wanted to discuss briefly was something that has come to everyone's attention. I think everyone is probably aware that there is a 24-foot sailboat that has been sitting on the sand near the state beach, just one property to the west of the Kings Beach State Beach across from the Safeway. And I wanted to give you a little backstory on it. It broke loose in a storm, I believe, over a year ago, and drifted up to its essentially current location. It's been stranded now by receding waters. The Lahontan Water District, who would be jurisdictional, has been working with the owner to get it removed. To use a term that the teenagers recognize, the owner started ghosting them. And so looking at the correspondence going back and forth, mentioning fines of up to $100,000, I don't know that that would be my choice. We supported them as best we could by writing a criminal complaint against the owner for essentially unlawful dumping and abandonment of private property on someone else's property. And the district attorney's office has indicated they will move forward on that. So hopefully that will give another push for the owner who is in the Reno area to actually take care of that. In the meantime, Supervisor Gustafson did reach out and, and ask for an update and some action on it. So use it, for lack of a better term, our tow authority is pretty limited in those circumstances. If you're abandoning your car on the roadway, there's a very specific section that allows us to seize your car and move it. There is no such authority for boats. And so we have had discussions with county council, and we currently have 2 contractors that we have spoken to who are interested in bidding on the project to see, hopefully next week. They indicated they wanted to wait till the end of the storms. So hopefully next week we'll have further motion on this, or at least further information for development. In the meantime, Wilhanton Water District, just so you know, has not abandoned their efforts. We weren't certain from the email chain whether or not they had. We have been in communication with them. They are continuing their efforts, and they actually want to continue to be involved in this process.
Great, thank you so much.
Slow moving, but
Yes.
moving.
Yeah, I have 2 things to ask you.
Sorry, as just a point of order, that we'll have an opportunity for public comment in a few moments, but
I have a question.
right, I understand, but we've got a lot of folks in the room, so it's just, we've got Robert's Rules of Order here that we're going by. And so I appreciate it, but there'll be a public comment period.
I'm not used to these many people.
I apologize. I'm probably creating this chaos by mentioning questions. So,
Thank you. Any other updates tonight, or is that the end of your update?
that is the end of my report.
Thank you. I appreciate the report.
We have one online.
Nicole?
Denise,
Sorry,
Denise, from the Tahoe City PUD is
Oh.
online.
the update is on.
Yes,
Thank you.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me? Yes, okay, great. Hello, good evening, MAC members of the public. I'm Denise Springsteel, Communications Specialist for the Tahoe City Public Utility District. And I have a few updates to share on behalf of the district this evening with you. With the first significant snowstorm of the season comes snow clearing work by our teams. I wanted to share an update on the multi-use trail clearing locations for this winter season. So we will be clearing snow from the intersection of State Route 28 and Dollar Hill Drive, so by the 7-Eleven there, west through Tahoe City, and south on State Route 89 down to the El Dorado County line, Pine Street in Tahoma. So last season we cleared the Timberland. So the section between Timberland and Tahoma is newly added this season to this snow clearing route. We will also continue to clear snow off the trail from 64 acres across the pedestrian bridge and heading north along State Route 89 to the entrance of Olympic Valley Road. And as you know, our trail system is a valuable recreation and transportation amenity for our community and our visitors. And we encourage you to visit our website for more information about the rules of the trail, winter snow removal details, and to take our trail system survey. Also with the winter storm comes excitement to start enjoying our Tahoe City Winter Sports Park. So we are starting to build the rink, and opening day for the park is scheduled for Friday, November 25th. We are offering the advanced reservation system again this season and encourage our users to plan ahead and make a reservation before visiting the park. The online reservations opened up this morning, so we invite you to visit our website to find out more details about the upcoming season at the park, to buy your season passes, and to make a reservation. And then lastly, shifting to our significant project on the West Shore, the Westlake Tahoe Regional Water Treatment Plant. Excavation and earthwork are complete for the construction season. Vertical construction of both the water treatment plant and the lake intake pump station buildings will be ongoing throughout the winter. The contractor is working towards having both of these buildings dried in, so getting the roof, the windows, the doors on over the next month or so, which will allow for the interior build out of the electrical and mechanical treatment equipment. So I wanted to share with you that this project represents a coordinated regional solution for drinking water and fire protection. And once it's operational, it will provide a safe, permanent, and drought-resistant drinking water source for our water service areas along the West Shore. And that's all I have in the way of updates for you this evening. Thanks for your time, and hope everyone's enjoying the fresh snow.
Yes, please.
Then Nicole has an update as well.
Fantastic.
Thanks, Caitlin. Just putting on my hat as a staff member of the Tahoe Truckee Community Foundation, and wanted to let everyone know that next Thursday, we're hosting a webinar on Zoom with a representative from CAL FIRE as well as the Tahoe National Forest to give a community recap of the 2020 fire season and some specific reflections on the mosquito fire. And lessons that were learned on the mosquito fire and in this past fire season compared to last season's. It's at 4 p.m. on next Thursday, November 17th. You do have to sign up for it ahead of time. You can visit our website, ttcf.net, to register and find more information on that. But just wanted to make sure everyone's aware that we'll have an opportunity to address the past fire season with our CAL FIRE and Forest Service partners.
He's cool. Is that it for our community reports?
Mhm.
Fantastic. Then we're going to the supervisor report.
Thanks, Caitlin. Hey, sorry about the room tonight. I know many of you were upset about the seating arrangements and the setup. North Tahoe PUD had set this up for us for an earlier meeting. I guess the CAP committee, the Resort Association had long meetings in here. And so it was reused in that same format. So apologize for some of the mix up on the room, but appreciate everybody being here and having such a great turnout. Largest MAC meeting we've probably had in as long as I've been going to MAC meetings, which might be close to 30 years.
What is MAC?
Municipal Advisory Committee or Council, yeah. And the RAC is the Regional Advisory because we combined two MACs way back when in 1989, I think. So for those of you who haven't met me before, I'm Cindy Gustafson. I'm the county supervisor for this area. I've lived up here 40 years and done a number of different things for with the community and for the community over those years. And I'm privileged to be your supervisor now. I also serve on the California Tahoe Conservancy Board and the TRPA Governing Board, among my other duties. So a lot of different hats to wear, and why the bags under my eyes keep getting larger and larger. A recap of our Board of Supervisors meeting. And in fact, there's more people here than came to our Board of Supervisors meeting in North Tahoe. We held it out at the resort at Squaw Creek. The board comes up here once a quarter, and I really encourage you to come when they're up here because they make that effort to come up here to be available to our community. And for decades, they've done that, and we really want to continue to do it. So please, when you see our agendas, it's usually once a quarter that the board is up here. And so they were up here October 24th and 25th. We did a site visit at the Olympic Valley Park. Looked at the Snow Museum and on the 24th, and then on the 25th, we had a full day of meetings. We entered into a preliminary agreement with the Climate and Wildfire Institute. This is a group that started about a year ago in California, was funded through the state legislature and the governor's office to really focus on research and best science for both climate change and wildfire. They're interested in using the old Tahoe City Fire Station and potentially the Bechtold building across the street from that to headquarter their opportunities to reach out to the public. And we're really excited to be partnering with them after all these years of having that building kind of sit in a what kind of state can I call that? Deteriorating state. How about that? Then we also gave our county staff gave us a really complete update on North Tahoe and Eastern Placer priority projects, including the State Route 89 Fanny Bridge Community Revitalization Project. We do plan to be able to go forward with that one. I believe 2024. This fall, they'll be opening bids and starting construction in 2024. And that's the final rebuilding of Fanny Bridge and the final roundabout at the Y. The Capital Projects Advisory Committee was formed, short-term rental program implementation update with our stakeholder group that we've been working with, and then changing the names of a lot of the naming in the former valley, the Olympic Valley now, but the former valley of Squaw, in which we are trying to eliminate any indigenous names and really move away from those. So indigenous derogatory names. And then yesterday, the Palisades at Tahoe specific plan, the board rescinded all the approvals on that. In August of 2021, the courts ruled on 4 items that were not sufficient in the EIR for that project. That project had been approved in 2016 by the Board of Supervisors, of which only 1 member remains now that was on that board at that time. That was 2016. The courts took a very long time to go through all the processes. So in August of 21, they sent the EIR back saying there were 4 items that needed to be addressed. And then in August of 2022, the court ordered that all the permits and approvals be rescinded and start the process again to address those items in the EIR. So that's moving forward now. And then finally, there's 2 more items. I don't know what the next slide is, but TRPA, we'll go back then. TRPA Executive Director Search, we had 28 applicants for that job. Very thorough process. We weeded, as the governing board, weeded that group down to about 7, and then down to 4. And 4 were interviewed through 3 different panels, including the 15-member board. And all of that was done very publicly and transparently because in Nevada, you cannot even do interviews in private for the governing board. So it's really an interesting process for, I think California is pretty advanced in the Brown Act and public transparency, but in Nevada, everything is in public. And so it was really an interesting process. But we did pick Julie Reagan. She's been the chief of external affairs for the agency for quite some time. And she was deputy director for various periods of time when the previous director had some surgeries. So Julie is the new executive director, and will be signing her contract next Wednesday. We'll authorize the final contract on that. And then just yesterday, the Board of Supervisors picked a CEO, and that was Jane Christensen. She's been in our interim position, and those of you who might have worked with Jane, she's been with the county for 4 or 5 years now, 5 years, and has been serving as assistant CEO. Again, a very thorough process. We narrowed it down to 4 for final interviews, and or 3 for final interviews. And picked Jane yesterday. So we're really excited to have Jane on board. Those of you who've worked with Jane know she's passionate about Tahoe as well as the rest of the county, and really brilliant. She was a city equivalent of a city manager in Redmond, Washington, and oversaw the growth and development when Microsoft came to town up there. So has a lot of great experience of what happens when you grow too fast and too quickly in certain areas. So we're excited to work with her.
So what is exactly her title? She's the CEO of Placer County?
Yes, County Executive Officer. Yeah. And then a few upcoming meetings and dates. November 28th, we will have a special Board of Supervisors meeting with a budget workshop. We start our budget now, even though July 1 will be the date that we adopt a budget, or by July 1 we'll adopt the budget. So the initial workshop looking at our revenues and expenses for the first 6 months of this year, and starting our workshops with the staff on November 28th. November 29th is the regular Board of Supervisors meeting in Auburn. We'll have a special NTRAC meeting after tonight for final determinations and recommendations. And then we're looking at having an Eastern Placer Winter Town Hall where you can hear about snow removal services, other types of issues from all of the public agencies. And we we're trying to figure out a date on that, so we don't have that date worked out quite yet. Anything else I need to update everybody on? Oh, you can always sign up for our newsletters, both on website or we will email them to you, and happy to stick around tonight and answer questions after. But I know you're all here for the meat of the content, so I won't keep going any longer. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Cindy. We're grateful to have you in the room with us tonight. So now we're gonna move to our NTRAC member reports. And I'm gonna take an opportunity to use my member report space to just share a little bit more about the NTRAC and the process tonight and what we're hearing tonight. And how we'll move through the rest of our evening tonight. So NTRAC is the North Tahoe Regional Advisory Council. It's a advisory body to the Board of Supervisors. So items come before the NTRAC to elevate them to the public, to solicit public comment. Members of the NTRAC talk to our neighbors, to many of you, to our friends, our community members, hear issues, and then elevate those issues. We ask questions, elevate issues of concerns. And then when we have an action item, we'll ultimately make a recommendation on that action item. Notably, tonight is an information item, so there will be no action taken tonight at the end of our session. But this is exactly the process that we're going through. We heard an information item on this item when we got together at the October 13th meeting. So this is a second information item, and then as I understand it from our update, that we'll come back together. We'll hear another update on November 30th, and at that point, there will be an action item where we'll make a recommendation about the NTRAC's advisory position to the supervisors on our opinion on the updates. We can, at that point, endorse them, I believe, wholeheartedly, or we can make a motion to endorse them with amendments or changes that we see fit, that we would love to hear from you tonight.
Are you
So-
NTRAC and MAC? This group right here?
So in our great jurisdiction here, we have places that are municipalities and we have places that are more of the regional unincorporated. So we are a RAC. There are other MACs. MAC and RAC is not a super important distinction, but this is a RAC because we are a regional advisory council, and our boundaries go from kind of state line up here down up to the Placer County portion above North Star. Over towards the right above Alpine, we've got the Alpine portion, and then down to portion of the West Shore. So that is the region that we advise the Board of Supervisors on issues that come before that impact that region.
And when you say we, you mean this group right here?
This group right here,
Okay, but you're also known as MAC.
we're just a RAC. But again, that distinction is not.
This is too many acronyms. I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure out who you really are.
Used to, they're MACs in general. This one shows a little bit different name, but they're all the same. They advise the Board of Supervisors and the Planning Commission on planning matters in their vicinity.
Are they elected?
And in
No,
that
they're appointed.
advisory position, we are appointed, we do have public meetings, and having public meetings means we also follow Robert's Rules of Order, which means you heard us vote on the agenda and on those minutes and all of that. So what's going to happen after my council members make any updates that they have to make on issues that they're involved in our community, we will have public comment for anything not on tonight's agenda. So anything you're passionate about in the community that is not part of the Tahoe Basin Area Plan item that we'll be discussing, you'll have a moment to make public comment on that. Then we'll hear our information item. After that, you'll have another opportunity to make public comment or ask questions directed to us on the item. We then have an opportunity to ask those questions of our presenters if we agree that that's a question that we'd like to ask tonight. And after that, the council will make comments. We won't be taking a vote or taking action on anything tonight. That will be happening at the November 30th meeting. So that is my member update tonight. And I will pass it down to Rebecca and we'll whip around for any member updates.
I don't have a report.
I have no report.
No report.
And it looks like Kat also joined us online. So do Kat or Nicole have any reports?
I have one, Maggie, thank you. I'll just put my Tahoe City Downtown Association hat on for a minute. We have a member party coming up at Zaz in Tahoe City on November 16th. That'll be from 5 to 7 p.m. Everyone is welcome to come hear more about the Tahoe City Downtown Association, meet our board members, the projects we're working on, and enjoy a drink and some appetizers on TCDA. So I hope everyone can join us. Thanks.
Yeah. Nicole, any updates for Mia?
No,
What time was that meeting, did she say?
It's from 5 to 7 on the 16th, Zaz in Tahoe City.
Thanks.
All right, so now we're going to take 15 minutes if we need that amount of time for folks to make public comment on anything not on the agenda tonight. So if anyone would like to make public comment on something not on the agenda, you can queue up at the podium and start by stating your name.
I just have a quick question.
Okay, if you could stand up and state your name for the public record.
Dale Bowen, and I would like to know who appoints you. This group that's making it.
The Board of Supervisors in its entirety appoints the group.
And how do you choose these people?
They usually apply, we post it, and we can talk later, ma'am, and we can go through if you're interested in participating.
I'm curious because appointed is different than elected, but they're making recommendations regarding
Right,
where we live.
right.
So. I
And
think
they live
elect-
here, they're part of our community, they
Yeah,
volunteer a lot of time for this community.
that wasn't my question, but I understand what you're saying.
Is this the podium?
It is.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
on there.
Yeah, Ann Nichols, North Tahoe Preservation Alliance, and I just wanted to say that I hope when people speak tonight that they'll identify themselves if they're associated with the project on the North and West Shore, so that we'll know who they are speaking for. And then I just want to say that Julie Reagan is really a nice gal, great person, worked at the TRPA since 2003. But I was really hoping, she was in PR and marketing. I was really hoping we'd get a fresh view of everything and have a different, a different look. It's just, seems like just more of the same. Thank you.
We have one online,
Great, we'll go to the online public comment.
unless they're. Sir, do you have one? Okay. We'll wait.
Billy Johnson, Kinky Beach resident. Here's what I think is not being addressed and it needs to be, is the sidewalks. For instance, if you look from 267 on the north side of the road, the nice paper sidewalks going to Safeway, they're never plowed. Even right now, there's snow everywhere there. It's really strange how they stop just at 267. And yet a lot of people need to get to Safeway. A lot of people walk, a lot of people ride the bus, especially with new workers coming in. So I think that could be helpful if somebody could take a look at that.
Thanks, Billy. I appreciate that. Any other public comment in the room?
Yeah, Regina Straber, Kings Beach, and I would like to suggest that in the future, before next summer comes, that we put the issue of parking on the road in Kings Beach. I think that's becoming more and more a problem as we become more and more a tourist center. We have to start looking at how our traffic is being impacted. Where our 2-lane highways are being drawn down to 1-lane highways because we can no longer, because people are parking now on both sides of the road. So we need to put that on the future agenda and start addressing it before the tourist season starts again. I hope we can do that. Is that possible? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Regina. Anyone else? Go online then.
Scarlett, you can unmute and give your comment. Scarlett, you can unmute your mic and give your comment.
I didn't on purpose raise my hand.
Okay, sounds good.
Sorry.
Sounds good. No problem. Thank you.
All right. So I think that was it for our online and in the room public comments. And now we will move to tonight's information item on the Tahoe Basin Area Plan, Economic Sustainability and Housing Amendments. And we'll turn it
I'll
over.
introduce myself, yeah.
Fantastic.
So good evening, everyone. Stephanie Holloway. I'm with the Placer County CEO's office up here in Tahoe. My office is in Tahoe City, and hopefully you can all hear me. I'll try to project a little better. So glad to see everybody here tonight. This is obviously a very it's going to be a very informative presentation for you all, and I know a lot of you are interested in this. So I'm not going to speak too long, but I did want to intro the amendments and kind of the history behind how we got to tonight. And wanted to also emphasize, start out by emphasizing the regional plan and really the partnership that we have as a county with TRPA and our other sort of regional partners on sustainability, on environmental benefits, as well as economic benefits for our region. The Tahoe Bay, the regional plan, TRPA's regional plan, and their mission is really founded on finding an equilibrium of development within the basin and sustainability, and really preserving the environment that we are all allowed to be in and live in. So the Tahoe Basin Area Plan kind of takes one step down and more granularly defines some of the regulatory requirements that the regional plan sets forth for us. And tonight is about really making some changes, making some edits that not only promote economic vitality for our downtowns, but it also provides really a lot of opportunities for us from an environmental stewardship perspective. Really looking for redevelopment, reinvestment in our town centers that also, brings those environmental benefits. So I just wanted to introduce Crystal Jacobson, who's our Deputy Community Development Director. She's on the line, I think, on Zoom with us tonight. And then also introduce Stacy Wydra and Emily Setzer, who will give you the bulk of the presentation. So some housekeeping. Megan already kind of introduced this, but public comment, we'll let Stacy and Emily get through their presentation, and then hear from the RAC, and then take public comment. So thank you all for being here. I really appreciate everybody's voice and passion around this issue, and I'm going to hand it to Stacy or Emily.
Thank you for being here. It is a pleasure to speak in front of so many people at a NTRAC. I have never had this happen before. Emily Setzer, Principal Planner in our Tahoe City Community Development Resources Agency office. I'll just say that Stacy and I both are based out of that office, and we live here. So we are residents of North Tahoe, just the same as you all.
You have to point at me.
I point it one way. What am I pointing at?
Me, the computer. No, it doesn't like you, I guess. Do you want to turn it off and turn it back on?
There we go. Okay, so why are we here? We have a lot of problems in the area, a lot of challenges. I like to say lots of room for opportunity. But we are really focusing on three main issues right now. So one is, since 2017, the adoption of our area plan, a lot of people had high expectations that the new area plan would help spur some redevelopment in our two town centers, Kings Beach and Tahoe City. And that hasn't really happened. We've had some applications come forward. They're just, pretty much stalling right now. They're working through a lot of kinks in our process. So particularly, we haven't had any new lodging. We haven't had new lodging since the 60s. So that is a big deal for the area right now. And because of that, we've seen our lodging shift to short-term rentals over the years and into our neighborhoods. So we're trying to kind of reshift that back towards our town centers in the form of lodging. New hotels in particular. Second, we have a lack of workforce housing development. So we've seen a lot of new single family homes go in, but the statistics that we're seeing right now is that over 80% of our housing in North Lake Tahoe is for second homes and short-term rentals right now. We haven't seen new workforce housing come in, new duplexes, triplexes, small lots, small homes, multifamily apartments. We really haven't seen that unless the county has worked with an affordable housing developer to go after tax credit financing to bring that forward. We also we've been seeing a declining year-round population. So every small business I've talked to has been facing the same challenges. We may have a really good customer base in the winter and in the summer, but come fall and come spring, there's really not a sustainable year-round population here to really create that year-round economy. We have lost, just in the Placer County portion of the Tahoe Basin, about 2,000 full-time residents since 2000, and that's based off census numbers. So we have worked with there's been a couple of reports that have come out to talk about why is this happening and then what can we do. So in 2019, the county's executive office hired a consultant, Bay Area Economics, to work on a town center economic sustainability needs analysis to really identify what are the problems that are preventing redevelopment from happening, that are preventing from housing from happening. And then similarly along those lines, the Tahoe Prosperity Center, which is a nonprofit that focuses on the entire basin, released some reports just recently called Envision Tahoe, and I'll go over those. So that report conducted by BAE really identified the financial feasibility needs and gaps behind the lack of private investment. And it identified local government regulatory updates and incentives that we could do as staff to really attract that environmentally and economically beneficial reinvestment in our town centers. And they developed recommendations to address these issues. So 4 broad findings that they found were probably a start of no surprise to anybody, but to develop in Lake Tahoe area, it's a very high cost of development. Additionally, there's uncertainty and risk associated with our entitlement and permitting process. A lot of people who've very experienced developers from other areas or business owners who have gone through the same processes in other locations come here and think, wow, we have to go through the county and we have to go through TRPA. This is pretty complicated. And then we have complex and prescriptive requirements additionally. And all of those conditions create this perception of increased risk. And we haven't had somebody really come through and be that example project to show that it can be done. So BAE recommended that we update a document that we already had called the North Lake Tahoe Economic Incentives Program to include a transient occupancy tax incentive program so that new hotels that come forward that charge transient occupancy tax per night, that's the additional tax that goes on a hotel room, could actually get a rebate so that for a temporary time period. So that's an incentive for hotel developers to come in. They also suggested that we add a process to our county processes about how to allocate TRPA development rights. So if you're not familiar with the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, or the TRPA as we are calling it, they have pretty much commoditized everything in the basin for development. So if you want to build a house, you need a residential unit of use. If you want to put in a store, you need commercial floor area. If you want to put in a hotel room, that's a tourist accommodation unit. So everything is a commodity. So right now we're kind of giving them out on a first come, first served basis. There's a fixed number of these commodities. And they suggested that we actually kind of create an allocation process to make sure we're distributing these development rights in the manner that aligns with the goals of the area plan in the community. They also suggested that we work to create an enhanced infrastructure finance district for areas like sidewalks in Kings Beach Grid in particular, where sidewalks may be built right now on a project by project basis. So it's very piecemeal and you're going to see a sidewalk in front of this project, but not in front of this one, even though they're on the same street. So one of the things we are talking about how to implement would be a district that constructs and develops sidewalks on a holistic one-time manner or at a phased approach. So we actually achieve those goals. They also recommended a whole slew of process, policy, and code improvements, and that's largely what we're here bringing forward today. To really kind of spur some of the development we'd like to see, that's kind of infill targeted development at certain locations, certain types of uses. Scale back requirements for those targeted uses, to really try to make this development process a little less of a stumbling block to get through. So we've also been working with TRPA on code changes. TRPA has what they're calling the Tahoe Living Working Group, really focused on just implementing and changing code changes throughout the Tahoe Basin in order to facilitate housing that's available to our local workforce. So we've been working very closely with them on that. And then they suggested updating parking standards and creating parking districts. So that's definitely been on the list of staff priorities.
What does that mean?
That is alluded to in this presentation and in our changes. So that would mean creating a shared parking district so that each new business that comes in doesn't have to be forced to develop a new parking lot, because the last thing we all want to see is more pavement everywhere. We don't have space for that either. But say, for example, we have parking lots that are used during the day by a bank, but not in the evening. So could the restaurant guests in the evenings use that parking lot in the evening? So really a shared parking space, parking district. Really update our parking standards so that we're not requiring every new business to come in to build new parking. Really think creatively about the parking we do have and rely on our public transit as well. And then ways to increase workforce housing allowances. Right now, to build housing in most locations that's not a single family house, it's requiring a use permit, which then triggers environmental review under the state law, which honestly could add a year or two or more of time to a project and hundreds of thousands of dollars just to create, say, a 10 unit apartment complex. And then they also suggested adding funding to implement programs to attract and retain permanent residents, because tying back to those local businesses, we really need a year-round stable population in order to support the restaurants we'd like to see or local businesses we'd like to shop at. I don't know if that was me or you.
I don't know.
Oh, thank you. So I'll go over the Envision Tahoe report. That's what the Tahoe Prosperity Center just released in the past few months. Pretty much says a lot of the same things I just said, but overall across the entire Tahoe Basin, the basin has seen a decline in population. We've had even fewer school enrollment in the K through 12 schools across the basin. But interestingly, we have seen residents with advanced degrees increase. So it tells us that we have a more skilled, knowledgeable resident pool. You all know that our average wages here are not that high, especially compared to someplace like the Bay Area. The median average wage in Tahoe Basin as a whole, not just Placer County, but the whole basin, was about $53,000. Meanwhile, the median sale price of homes in North Tahoe was over 1 million and has been hovering there for quite a while now. And our economic base around Tahoe is concentrated in a few visitor-related industry clusters that really make the most, they comprise the majority of our economic output in the Tahoe Basin. And those sectors are really subject to swings in the economy. They can experience flat or declining job growth, and they're susceptible to disruption. One of those, for example, is construction. After 2008, we saw a lot of swings in the economy and disruption. So right now, construction has increased to become 12% of our job base in the Tahoe Basin. What they suggest that we do as a whole across the basin is to strengthen our key industries. So instead of relying purely on tourism that's pretty seasonal, or construction that is subject to disruption, really try to shift to more stable year-round industries, like shifting to health and wellness and environmental innovation. They suggested that we build region-wide skills programs and curriculums to really target that upward mobility. and to support our local business chambers and associations to really help launch those small business startups. Especially in North Tahoe, we don't have a lot of big box chain brands coming in who have a lot of money. So a lot of the new businesses we see really are the mom and pop startups. And then they also suggested that we have a basin-wide branding and marketing strategy focused on health and wellness, recreation in the outdoors, and environmental innovation. And as always, trying to support and accelerate workforce housing is key, and improving our transportation and mobility. So we took that information from those two reports. We also, I can tell you that I've sat on all of these different groups for the last number of years and have heard feedback continually, the same feedback from almost every group here. So that's the Tahoe Living Working Group, the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association, the Mountain Housing Council, and our two business associations, the Tahoe City Downtown Association and the North Tahoe Business Association. And even our customers, people who apply for businesses or come into the front counter at our offices, we've taken all of this feedback and it's pretty very similar. We also had a group of kind of applicants, design professionals, mom and pop businesses who we talked with and interviewed. So all of this feedback combined over the past handful of years has led to the amendments that we're bringing forward today. It's really coming directly from the community. We don't have housing. It's really hard to start a new business. I was just talking to a new coffee shop owner and she was telling me about the steps it takes just to start a new business. Our commercial spaces are really dated. They require a lot of expensive upgrades. It's just very difficult for people to get on the ground for new development. The permitting processes are lengthy and they're expensive. And our zoning restrictions and our site requirements are pretty complicated. So all of this feedback has been the same for years. I've sat in so many meetings every week, listening to the same feedback. And so we're really hearing the community input and trying to bring that forward in a documented set of amendments that make it easier to bring forward that coffee shop or the new restaurant that, I personally would love a new restaurant to go eat out or somebody to provide takeout. That would be great. Or hotels, so we can shift some of that lodging that we currently have in our neighborhoods now into our town centers. So just to let you know, this has been years of feedback and we thank everybody for that input and hope that we can work together to bring forward some solutions. So what did these amendments attempt to accomplish? We're really overall trying to facilitate that environmentally beneficial redevelopment. TRPA will be the first to stand up and say that the redevelopment brings things like best management practices, things that are construction related, development related, that prevent the runoff from going into the lake, that decrease the runoff going into the lake, that increase lake clarity and improve our local environment and help the wildlife. So in order to do that, we're hoping to bring forward a diverse business sector and new lodging products in our town centers, new hotels, diversify our business sector. Really help make it easier to build workforce housing. We want housing that is available to our local workers and not just apartments. We want, affordable by design, smaller homes or duplexes and triplexes, things that provide options for people who are looking to live here and maybe they just moved here, but they want to stay here and they're growing up and they're growing into larger or different types of homes. And then we want to support that year-round economy. So really have a stable population base to help those businesses really be able to survive here. What are we not doing? We are not increasing density. There's no discussion of density at all in these amendments. TRPA may be working on increasing density for certain workforce housing circumstances. If they do that, that will be through the Tahoe Living Working Group process. So we are not doing that through this set of amendments. We are not increasing the carrying capacity of the region. What we're trying to do is shift, so we have some more housing here So that all those workers who are coming from Reno or Carson, some of them can actually live up here. So that decreases the traffic. It's obviously less greenhouse gas emissions from driving, and they can live here and have a shorter commute to their jobs. We are not trying to increase overall building height. We will be talking about building height, but it will be limited in certain circumstances, and really looking at how do we get the hotels. So that is the only instance in which we are talking about increasing building height. And then we are not conflicting with any TRPA scenic or environmental thresholds. Every project that comes forward still needs to meet the TRPA scenic thresholds and environmental standards. And those are strict. Those are very strict. Today, even a project that wants to come in on the lakeside and meets all of our county standards may not meet TRPA scenic standards. So we're not able to just let every development go forward and block the lake view, because we all love the lake view and we want to preserve it. And that's why the TRPA scenic standards are there. These amendments that we're talking about do align with the TRPA regional plan and their threshold standards. So those are standards related to water quality, soils, scenic views, open space, vegetation, and fisheries. Again, that TRPA regional plan that Stephanie talked about is really designed at promoting that environmentally beneficial redevelopment and revitalization within the town centers across the entire basin, and to preserve the character of established residential areas outside of the centers while seeking opportunities for environmental improvements. And we can't get those improvements without development. So they go hand in hand. These amendments are also in line with our Placer County Resort Triangle Transportation Plan, which was adopted 2 years ago and focuses on mobility and alternative modes of transportation. As a county, we're really trying to get people to come here, park once, walk, take TART, be able to hop on a bike path. All of these different modes of transportation is what we're really focused on. So we don't need a lot of parking spaces. We also align with all of our parking initiatives. So 2 years ago, we brought forward a pilot parking exemption program for our town centers. And these amendments will kind of memorialize those and keep those and that program permanent. It also aligns with our parking management goals for the region that I talked about, that creative shared parking. And it aligns with transportation demand management strategies for North Lake Tahoe that were adopted a few years ago. So all of this is really trying to get to that be able to live closer to where you work. People who visit here be able to come here, park once, hop on a bus, hop on a bike, walk around, trying to get a lot less cars off of the roads. And so now I'll hand it over to Stacy, and she'll go over an overview of our Tahoe Basin area plan and what it covers today, and then what we're planning on proposing on changing in the future. Thank you, Emily. Good evening, everyone. So we're gonna begin. So starting off good. So the area plan was adopted by the county's Board of Supervisors in 2016. And then shortly thereafter by the TRPA, the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency's governing board in January of 2017. And the area plan actually replaced 6 community plans, the Placer County standards and guidelines for signage, parking, and design, 57 plan area statements, and 2 Placer County general plans, all of which predated the 2012 regional plan update. So we were, so what was governing our area was fairly old. And the area plans, of which I just spoke of, and the Tahoe Basin area plan encompasses the Tahoe Basin portion of Placer County within the jurisdiction of TRPA. And so with the regional plan update in 2012, a strategic goal of the regional plan was to remove regulatory barriers to environmentally redevelopment and create incentives for privately funded environmental enhancements. The area plan implemented the goals of the regional plan and provides direction for development of the local jurisdictions. So the area plan consists of 2 regulatory documents, the land use regulations and the policies, of which I will go over tonight, of those sections of both of those that we are proposing amendments to. And the regional land use regulations and the implementing goals and policies are basically, they assist us in ensuring the goals of the regional plan. And so that the area plan specifically identifies policy initiatives, capital improvements, redevelopment that would improve environmental conditions, and so forth. And like the regional plan, the area plan prioritizes environmental restoration, community redevelopment, and socio-economic improvement. And just back in 2020, the area plan was updated for housing and accessory dwelling unit updates. So within the area plan, the town centers are a critical component of achieving the goals of the regional plan. So what is a town center? A town center is typically defined as a commercial or geographical center or core area of the town, traditionally associated with shopping or retail. And I would almost add to that with eating and drinking places, a place to be, a sense of place. And so with the adoption of the 2017 area plan, the development standards were reformed. So again, working with some really old documents that, I mentioned, there were many different community plans, 6 community plans. So they each govern different areas. So they didn't really have much crossover, which isn't really great when you're trying to do transportation or, so we recognize that with the area plan in 2017. And then we also acknowledged that we needed to provide environmental improvements to the town center areas as well, where they were also planned and identified in the regional plan. So again, linking these plans to ensure we have a cohesive goal, both of TRPA, so that a project can go through the county and also go through TRPA and meet their standards. Because if we're off on that we're not doing our job, right? So then there was also the encouragement of redevelopment and opportunity for environmental gain with that redevelopment. And so so the area plan in 2017 also considered pedestrian-oriented design and scenic enhancements. And then we took it further to implement regional plan standards for development transfers, building height, density, and land coverage. Also allowing residential and mixed uses, allow conversion of commercial floor area or CFA, try not to use too many acronyms, to tourist accommodation units, which is also known as TAUs. And then also adopt new parking standards, kind of what Emily already touched on. How can we utilize these parking lots? And then, minimize that pavement, because that pavement is a runoff. It just, water doesn't stop. So these amendments that we are working on currently took these guiding principles into consideration and how we could further these visions or goals. And so speaking of visions, the town center visioning process of the 2017 area, thank you. There was a visioning process where community members put their thoughts in for the 2017 Tahoe Basin Area Plan update. And the goal of that was to obtain community input on the future of each community area and then guidance for redevelopment activities. They furthered it with priorities to address environmental gains and high quality redevelopment in certain areas. And so specific to, oops, I have one slide off. Specific to Tahoe City, the vision process examined the center of Tahoe City and identified improvements that could be made. And they came up with 11 visioning principles. And so of those, and I won't read through all of these, but they looked at increasing and upgrading lodging alternatives, year-round recreational opportunities, community scale, enhanced transportation modes, and the improvement of flow of traffic. So similarly in Kings Beach, same visioning process concurred. And theirs was to promote a diverse and friendly community that is centered on recreation. And so specifically, some of their visioning principles was a public pier and water transportation, transit, improved lodging accommodations, mixed use, infill, gateway entries. So you can kind of see the pattern here of what we're hearing and what's been said for many, many years. So next, I'm going to move into the actual policy amendments, and there are a number of policies and that are contained within the area plan today. And a policy is a set of ideas or plans that is used as a basis for making decisions. And so the policies inform the implementation regulations, which are more of the specifics, right? So what's your setback? How tall can your structure be, and so forth. So we looked at our existing policies, and to be consistent with the regional plan, the environmental redevelopment is encouraged for its environmental and economic benefits. And a means to achieve that it is by having guiding policies for development and redevelopment. So these go hand in hand. And so we looked at scenic resources and are proposing to amend our policies to include, TRPA scenic evaluation to direct private reinvestment to town centers. So again, ensuring that these projects continue to comply with the TRPA scenic standards. They are more strict than ours and our development standards and guidelines. So again, just to have that communication to the developer or someone who would like to build, that we are doing our job in communicating that. Also vegetation, encouraging defensible space, providing incentive and or rebate programs, we should be looking into socioeconomic, childcare facilities to meet the needs of our local workforce. Land use, we are looking at trying to create a reservation and conversion manual for the allocation and conversion of TRPA development rights. Also funding sources for frontage improvements or infrastructure such as sidewalks, curbs, and gutters, and then parking management plans. In the mixed use policy section, we are proposing some new policies to address mixed use, business and business park and light industrial spaces, and ways that we can further ensure the uses of those are to their best capacity. In our town centers, we also are proposing some new policies relative to active ground floor uses, retention and expansion of businesses. How do we get people to come here, and then how do we get them to stay here? Also relocate industrial and public utility land uses in our town centers to free up town center sites for the uses that we want to see in our town centers. No offense to the public people that we are, but we shouldn't be in our town centers. And then parking maximums and creative parking solutions. Also community design, we are proposing to add policies relative to local public art in Tahoe and encourage that. And then redevelopment, of course, consider adaptive reuse of vacant or underutilized retail and office space. Again, get folks in there, get them operating, and hopefully to keep them in there. Revitalize and create new high quality lodging. Identify multi-purpose and flexible gathering spaces. And again, this could be parking lots, having that, offset of time periods of when those parking areas are used. Expedite building permit processes, and then new business innovation space and flexible light industrial spaces. So again, just some of that crossover. And then, of course, housing. Housing is always, a main goal for all of us. And so we are introducing some new policies to streamline affordable, moderate, and achievable housing. Require that 50% of the units converted from multifamily to condos be deed restricted to affordable levels. Monitor and track this housing data, and then support adaptive management of short-term rental inventory to balance the housing availability. So basically, if a new lodging unit comes into our town centers, we will be able to reduce that short-term rental cap that is in our residential neighborhoods that we are seeing today. So now I'm going to talk about our implementing regulation amendments. So again, this was that more specific tool that we use that helps, guide development. So what is your setbacks? How many parking spaces do you need for whatever development that you're proposing? Is my use an allowed use in the building that I wish to go into? So I'm going to start with amendments to town centers. So specifically in our town centers, we have recognized that that with many state laws, with the many state laws that are changing, it's recognized that the area plan is not consistent with these Senate bills that are being enacted, and that with the implementation of, for example, Senate Bill 946, legalizing sidewalk vending, it was also recognized that these amendments could consider the facilitation of food-related startup businesses, which in turn can help strengthen the economy and the vitality of our town centers. So with these amendments, we are proposing to add mobile vendors and food trucks as an allowed use within our town centers with no use permit required and no maximum commercial floor area. So the what this would do is it would also ensure that we're compliant with these Senate bills, but then also hopefully get some more liveliness into our town centers, and maybe some of these food trucks can eventually move into a brick and mortar and, you know, of our town centers. So as specified by the regional plan, the focus of the area plan is to promote environmentally beneficial redevelopment and revitalization within our town centers. And so to achieve this, we recognize that uses such as new lodging products, restaurants, retail, local serving land uses, and need incentives to want to come and occupy our town centers. We also heard that the permit processing needed to be streamlined to encourage these types of uses. So how do we achieve this? And so the amendments are proposing that for small scale infill businesses such as restaurants, boutique, small hotels, locally serving businesses, that they be allowed without a use permit if they are small in scale, that they meet the TRPA thresholds based on the vehicle's miles traveled. And that so that the business that's proposed does not trigger a impact to traffic. So if the project is larger than the TRPA threshold, then the use permit would otherwise still be required. We've also acknowledged that we needed to look at some of our uses, our ground floor uses. And so we're encouraging more active ground floor uses. So one of our amendments is proposing that new real estate and property management offices not be allowed on the ground floor along the frontages of Highway 28. But they may be located on the second floor or behind. We want that more active ground floor use. So the regional plan also focuses on the compatibility between residential areas and town centers, and that the regional plan also provides direction to preserve the character of established residential areas outside of centers while seeking opportunities for environmental improvements. And so the objective of these amendments is to provide compatibility between the mixed use and residential districts. So the amendments proposed, we are proposing to add the missing building length maximums to Tahoe City. So uniquely in Kings Beach, there is a standard that the building length, or they restrict the building length, but oddly in Tahoe City, we do not have that same standard. So we are proposing to add that standard to Tahoe City. We're also proposing that the required length compatibility with residential zone districts be looked at, and that we are recommending that the building length for the mixed use tourist zone district, so it's near the state line, the Tahoe Inn area, in order for it to be compatible with the adjacent residential neighborhoods, we are proposing to decrease the building length from 350 feet to 250 or to 200 feet. Again, this is to address compatibility, and then incorporate transition lengths for building lengths for commercial, mixed use, or non-residential uses that are directly facing zone districts, that they have a maximum of 75 feet long. So in addition to the compatibility between zone districts, it's also important to study the development standards of the town centers. and to ensure that the development standards are in alignment with the modern development trends. And the amendments looked at how the building design and massing could be addressed. So the building length was also considered within the town centers for both Tahoe City and Kings Beach. An additional 250 feet on the mountain side for some town center mixed use may be considered if all of the following conditions are met. So the project needs to comply with the area plan design standards and guidelines, in addition to the scenic requirements of TRPA. Provide separations of length to address the massing. So for example, dropping the height of the structure in certain distances, which then can create a visual separation, but then it also allows opportunity for perhaps plaza areas or outdoor eating and display areas. And then they also have to include 15% of deed restricted achievable housing and public art. And then on the lake side, an additional 50 feet may be considered if at least 50% of the building comprises housing that is 100% deed restricted to affordable levels. So through this process, the maximum allowed building height within the town centers were identified as roadblocks, or rather a hindrance to development in the town centers due to the financial hardships. And so the amendments are considering a modification to the maximum height allowance to be distinguished by feet rather than stories. Also, an additional 5 feet, so a maximum building height of up to 61 feet building max would only be considered for town center mixed use projects that include all of the following. They're fronting Highway 28, they have 50 or more hotel units, deed restricted achievable housing, public art, and compliance again with both the counties or the area plans, design standards, as well as the TRPA scenic threshold standards. An additional 11 feet in height, so up to 72 feet building max may be considered for, again, these mixed use projects or mixed use buildings. Again, further meeting the criteria above, but only to be for, like, for example, rooftop amenities or chimneys and things of those natures. So, but it is important to note that projects of this scale that I am describing will be required to go through a permitting process, and that there will be some level of environmental review, which always results in public opportunity to comment. So as mentioned, one of the focuses of the area plan is, and again, governed by the regional plan, is to promote environmentally beneficial redevelopment and revitalization within our town centers. As mentioned with the vision process, recent studies, and from the community, and to further implement the regional plan, it was heard that the amendments should also consider the support of exemptions to parking, which would reduce environmental impacts, spur redevelopment, support strategies to increase mobility, and reduce VMT. So ways to achieve these considerations, amendments include groundwater provisions to align with TRPAs, but also provide for environmental beneficial redevelopment, which could facilitate reduction to coverage with the allowance for below grade parking, and or implement the parking lot, the parking exemption programs that we have for the town centers. So for example, additions for up to 1,000 square feet, no parking minimums may be applied. Or new construction like lodging units or other types of commercial uses could, we would try and encourage the shared parking lots that would be created to provide parking for the folks.
For hotels,
I'm sorry,
for hotels, you're saying shared parking?
for any and all uses.
And how are they getting out in case of a fire?
Well,
We're gonna take public comment when the presentation's over.
Yeah. So, whoops, so I'm slide off, but that's okay. I'm gonna just bounce around really quick. So I'm gonna move on to housing amendments, and forgive me, but for some reason these slides just are a little bit out of order, but I'll start here and then I'll hop back. But So the goal here always is to provide for more housing, and that we heard to develop multifamily housing is too costly and takes too much time. And so it's identified that the area plan needs to be reflective of existing conditions. So we needed to match existing lot sizes, which can accommodate the smaller type of residential units that folks can afford. And so it was also recognized that in our area plan, there are 21 residential zone districts that oddly contained this special designation for preferred, affordable, and achievable and moderate areas. But unfortunately, it didn't have any incentive for these 21 zone districts, residential zone districts. So the amendments proposed before you today is to basically allow multifamily housing in these zone districts if 100% of the units are deed restricted to affordable levels. And that's per TRPA's code. And then also we're looking at ways to, encourage the development of multifamily and what are those barriers that why people aren't building these smaller type homes. So we looked at the minimum lot size and we're proposing to reduce those, also reduce the lot widths and then the setbacks as well. So a housing report was prepared for TRPA by a company named Opticos. And the report is identified as the missing middle. And out of that missing middle report, a number of recommendations were provided to support the missing middle housing, which are the duplex style, the side-by-side stacked and so forth, in our walkable neighborhoods. And so it was recommended in these walkable neighborhoods that parking requirements be reconsidered and either reduced or remove parking requirements for the multifamily and reduce single family parking standards to accommodate these smaller lots and this affordable and to assist with this affordable by design. So the proposed area plan is proposing to incorporate those amendments as recommended by the report. So there we go. We have heard from the community that new standalone single family, for example, condominiums development in our town centers is not favorable, and that the current allowance of single family development in town centers should be reconsidered. So while we heard from the community, we also heard from developers, and that in order to facilitate a mixed use development, some single family needs to be allowed. And this helps offset some of the costs for the uses such as workforce housing and or commercial uses, while still achieving the goals of the area plan and the community. So the amendments are proposing to allow single family development within a mixed use project. So again, it has to have both commercial development, retail, and it can have single family type residential units. If up to 25% of the project, they would only allow single family development up to 25% of the project, or at least 50% of the single family residential units are deed restricted to affordable housing levels. So in keeping with the housing trends, the Board of Supervisors in June of 2022 adopted the countywide housing code amendments to allow for tiny houses as primary or accessory dwelling units, employee housing, and tiny house communities. And so these amendments are proposing to incorporate those adopted, or this as an adopted use into our area plan where it's currently missing. And then also with reliance on the county code, and then that the county would regulate the use and the development standards for these types of tiny homes. So then other miscellaneous amendments. As always, there's continuous change that occurs with either the county or TRPA, and standards are changing or up, or having to react to state laws that are being enacted. And so we needed to ensure that we're consistent with all of those. So some of the miscellaneous modifications or amendments we're proposing are to clarify street frontage improvements and require that of all development, including single family. Also, eliminates section 3.11, the sign regulations in our area plan, and just refer the reader to our TRPA code of ordinances and their chapter. And then update our area plan to reflect Placer County's recent code adoption of Article 12.32, which is the Lake Tahoe Shore Zone. And so what this is really to alert the reader that they may have requirements of Placer County for any shore zone development, in addition to the TRPA standards. So again, making sure we're communicating to our readers. And then of course, always miscellaneous cleanup, typos, and the like. So what are our next steps? We are currently doing an environmental review. An environmental checklist will be created, and it will evaluate the potential environmental impacts of these amendments with respect to both the 2012 regional plan update environmental impact statement. So that's what environmentally informed that regional plan update. In addition to the 2017 area plan, so the document that governs us today, it had an environmental impact report and an environmental impact statement that evaluated all of the environmental impacts associated with that area plan. And so we will be doing the same with these amendments and working within those environmental boxes, if you will, of those already completed and adopted and certified environmental documents that I just stated. So the EIR and the EIS. So next steps, outreach, future public meetings. Since the release of the proposed amendments in September, we have been to a number of associations, as you can see here. As mentioned earlier, we were here at NTRAC in October. And then moving forward after tonight's meeting, we will come back on the 30th with a request for recommendation to the Placer County Planning Commission, which is tentatively scheduled for December 8th. And then additional public opportunities will continue. Not only can you come on the 30th, but you can also come on December 8th. But then we will embark upon our presentations and our proposals to TRPAs. And TRPA has RPIC, which is an equivalent to the NTRAC. And then we will also head to the Board of Supervisors shortly thereafter. And then after the Board of Supervisors, if we get an approval, then we will move on to TRPA's APC and their governing board. So a lot of opportunities for public comment. And as you can see, we got a lot more to go. And so thank you very much. I know this was a really long presentation, a lot to digest. But that concludes our presentation at this time. And
thanks, Stacy. So now in terms of our process, the NTRAC members will have an opportunity to ask clarifying questions to the presenters. We'll go around our circle until all of our questions have been asked, at which point we will come to you for public comment. Again, you'll have 3 minutes to make a public comment. And if you have questions, you can direct those questions at the council. When all public comment is complete, then the council members can ask your questions to the presenters. So that's how we'll kind of maintain our process. Rebecca, I will turn it over to you for questions you may have, or one question that you may have, and we'll go around. Right now. All right.
So I don't have any questions right now. I did meet with Stacy for an hour in her office a week or so ago, and that was very helpful. I still have lots of other thoughts on the matter, but I'll bring those up later.
Okay.
I have one question about use permits for the mobile vendors. You said that's not required. Is that required for brick and mortar businesses now?
it would depend. It would depend on what zone district you are actually located in. So some zone districts do allow for eating and drinking places, as we would call them, but others did not, and they required a minor use permit. We recognize that as a hardship, that we should be allowing these types of uses that are somewhat the heart of our town centers. So we looked at those amendments to allow these by right if they meet the vehicle miles traveled threshold. So they cannot, their use cannot exceed or provide more traffic impact. Does that make sense?
No.
No, okay.
I thought,
So for the mobile
Wasn't-
vendors.
sorry, Russell, was your question whether the business, brick and
Yes,
mortar
brick
businesses
and
have to
mortar.
pay those that
Yeah.
we're now gonna be waiving for mobile vendors?
Well, so that's two things. Mobile vendors are allowed to use, but a brick and mortar, an eating and drinking place. I think, maybe I missed.
They have to have a use permit in order to serve food and drinks.
Right now, you need a use permit to have a food truck or to have an eating and drinking, like a restaurant in many locations. So what we're trying to do is make it easier for a startup to get off the ground and running. So we've had a couple examples of businesses who have started as food trucks and then moved to brick and mortar locations because it's a less expensive way to start. So we're trying to allow for either option. So in the future, they'll just have to comply with environmental health regulations for the mobile food truck. And then for the brick and mortar store, if they are below TRPA's threshold for triggering traffic impacts, like how many vehicle trips per day do they think that restaurant will bring forward? So if it's below that threshold, we're removing the use permit. If they think they're going to trigger more people in cars, then the use permit still exists.
So there is a little difference between how one business is treated rather than the other.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all.
Again?
Yes, I spent, I don't have my hour long questions like I did on October 13th, but I do have one. I've spent some time. I mean, this is the third level of amendments we have. So we have the state imposed, the TRPA imposed last year, and now these amendments are being proposed. But I looked at all 21 residential zone districts at the changes, and the only changes I could see in residential were Kings Beach Grid, Fairway Track, Tahoe Vista, Tahoma, and Tavern Heights. Now, the additions mostly were multi-person dwellings and employee housing that all speak, to Kings Beach. This means the entire grid is the multiple family dwellings, duplexes, fourplexes, multi-person dwellings and employee housing is an allowable use throughout the entire grid.
Yeah, I think today in the Kings Beach residential zone district, single family and multifamily are already allowed. So we just wanted to make it so there were some options, because instead of just a typical apartment building, if somebody wanted to build more of a dorm style building within our development standards, they could do that. That's what multi-person is often considered, or a new development trend is kind of micro units, so small rooms. But perhaps there's a shared kitchen and a shared living space. So those types of housing units are now going to be allowed. We're really just trying to create diversity of housing types. And I'll further that of the residential zone districts that we looked at and are proposing to modify, they had special designations for preferred affordable housing and multi-residential incentive programs. So we were trying to match the special designation uses to those allowed uses in the table that were otherwise missing. So like the multi-person use was not listed in the Kings Beach residential subdistrict. So in order to facilitate all different types of residential housing to meet these special designations of affordable housing and multi-residential incentive program. So it's sort of just linking.
Well, my specific question though is it shows like on Fairway, okay, it's allowed, no permitting, it's allowable use aside from the usual building permits and whatever there. but on the Fairway track, it shows multiple multi-person is allowable, but it also shows the MUP, the minor use permit. Is it allowed or is it a minor use permit? Because there seems to be some discrepancy on these residential, if it's an allowed use or if a minor use permit is necessary.
So in many places, we allowed it if it's deed restricted to achievable under TRPA, which right now has a very high, a pretty decently high income cap. They're moving towards that definition of achievable being really relying on just having at least one local worker in your household, recognizing that even high incomes here have a hard time finding housing. So they're really working towards that local worker. So we made it so that if it was not allowed previously, now it would be allowed if it's deed restricted to achievable, which ties to the local worker. Otherwise, if they want to build it, it would require a use permit if they're not going to deed restrict it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Do we have member comments or questions specifically for the folks that are on the virtual space?
Looks like Catherine does.
Catherine?
Yeah, hi, it's Catherine. Yes, I had a question about the deed restrictions requirements. Or would these be in perpetuity on the property? So if the owner changed hands or the developer was sold to another developer, does the deed restriction for affordable housing stay with the property?
So our deed restrictions run for 55 years. That's the maximum that we are allowed to restrict under California state law. But it would change, it would go on to a future owner within that 55-year period.
Okay. And is there any thing the state law allows it? Could it be re-upped for another period in the future that the county could require, or how would that work? Not that we can see 55 years.
Yeah, it could be. So one example is our workforce housing preservation program, which is a kind of a grant incentive program to help local workers buy houses. That program requires a deed restriction for the 55 years, but in that program, every time it changes hands, so every time the property sells or changes hands, then the 55 years starts again at year one. So
Okay.
we could look at requiring like a reset at that 55-year period.
Okay, thank you.
I just have two quick ones. One related to the parking space exemptions in town centers. I'm just curious what I understand the reasoning because it makes the redevelopment side easier if you have less parking spots to potentially have to account for. But given the parking challenges our town centers are already facing and the impacts those parking challenges are having on the surrounding residential communities, what is the thought behind how those parking challenges are actually mitigated if we're not requiring, or if we're providing exemptions for those parking space requirements? How are we actually going to mitigate the parking issues then? Or what's the thought behind that?
Yeah, so in most cases, we're not actually removing a lot of parking requirements, but we're trying to set ourselves up for shared parking, creative parking solutions. So that would be really hand in hand. Let's take Kings Beach, for example. We get a lot of beachgoers here who end up parking up through the neighborhood, potentially 8-9 streets up. So what we would be looking at is and this is outside of the area plan. The area plan has language that opens ourselves up to these types of creative solutions, but don't actually specify all of the details. Those would live outside of the area plan. So what we're looking at is for potentially a parking management plan in the town center. Let's say it could potentially involve a paid parking system and residential parking permits so that we have shared parking lots in the town center. So they're not specific maybe to one business or another, but they're shared and really well utilized. We could involve paid parking. This is all in a future initiative, by the way. And then in the residential area, in order to preserve those streets and really the neighborhood character and not get inundated, we would have a residential parking permit. We would have some no parking signs. So it would really work hand in hand in order to not overflow everyone.
Okay.
Yeah, please do.
So I think the question was on the parking waiver, the regulatory requirements and the waivers for that. And I think the thought behind that is it's not just a waiver, there is a requirement of offsetting benefit to alternative modes, be it transit, contributions to biking, walking, alternative modes of transportation. And I think, you know, overall, what Emily laid out was parking management, but also from the regulatory or the requirement side for parking. It's really working kind of together as a suite of options to change a culture around transportation, around use of a vehicle, to really promote this idea of park once, or, you know, if you can get into the region without your vehicle, there are alternative services, there are alternative transportation modes for you to take. Again, kind of coming back to this opportunities for environmental benefit, and transportation is a big area that we can do better.
Thank you. Just one other question. This wasn't spoken to, but it's one that I've had lingering in a lot of project proposals that have come up around whether there would ever be consideration, and I don't know if it would even be appropriate to include this in basin plan amendments, but considerations around expiration dates for project approvals. And I'm asking that because we've seen a couple projects recently that were approved, you know, years and years ago and never executed, and then they pop back up. But because they were approved under previous versions of regulations, they're, you know, then being executed much further down the line based on old regulations. And there's not a lot that can be done at that point. I'm just curious if there's any policy change considerations from the county in that space. And one example I'm thinking specifically of is that that new office building right at the edge of Tahoe City by the post office, that I guess had been approved a long time ago and just didn't get built for a very long time. And something like that in the future, you know, if these amendments were passed, but then it doesn't get built for 6 years or something. I'm just wondering if we're thinking of mitigating those types of scenarios.
Well, I can speak to that. So every entitlement has an expiration date to it, and timelines of which they have to achieve certain things to basically vest the permit. So, for example, usually when a project is approved, it's allowed 36 months to initiate development, and initiating development means putting in the foundation, you know, some significant improvements to the site to get that project going. The one building you're specifically referring to, it did expire. It was a design review permit. And then they had to come back in and reapply and go through the entire process again. So I can understand that from a vision or a lens from the outside, it may look like they had approvals for that long, but they actually didn't. And so when they came back in, because their permit expired, they had to be reviewed by the code that was, you know, at the time. But I guess to answer your question, these amendments do not include those, you know, mitigations or expiration dates, but rather just our overall code does set, you know, deadlines, timeframes, and so forth. But then there are allowances for extensions of time. So that might be another, I guess, way to look at projects that maybe do take so long to develop, is because they were, you know, they came in and they got approved, and then they asked for an extension of time, and they can ask for up to 6 years. So that is part of our code. And that is available to these projects. So, but every time they ask for an extension, we do reevaluate it to the code that is currently in place at that time. So they could be added more conditions. There could be some changes that could be applied to the project. So I hope
Thank
that
you.
answers your question.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification.
So I had one question about, Stacy, you mentioned something about the impact of hotels on the STR cap. Could you specify what that was? Again, I missed your comment.
Yeah, no problem. So really the idea behind this, and I'll probably let Emily expand a little bit further, but the idea is we've seen that if we can get lodging units in our town centers, then we will be able to reduce our short-term rental cap that we have currently. And I think it's 3,900 right now. So in other words, as we get more lodging units, that number can come down so that the impacts to our residential neighborhoods lessen because there's available lodging in our town centers.
In other words, reducing the permits? Allowed, is that what you're saying?
No, reducing the number of allowed short-term rentals to be permitted in the county, in the Tahoe Basin, I should say, sorry.
So Rebecca, do you have enough? We're gonna go, we've gone around our circle now, so we're gonna go around again. Do you have another
I
question?
do have a question. Talking about parking permits for the neighborhoods. Is there a thought to a North Shore permit? Because for example, I live in Dow City. I see a lot of home health patients in Kings Beach. There's a lot of crossover. So instead of just a Kings Beach parking permit or a Tahoe City, could there be something that covers the North Shore, West Shore, so that people who have to conduct business can park when they get there?
Yeah, so I'll just clarify, that's not part of these amendments.
Okay.
It's a separate plan that we would be taking on in the future, but we're definitely talking about it. We know it's an issue as the county. So that's for sure an option, but we haven't really gotten to that level of detail yet.
Okay.
No questions at this time.
I have one follow-up question. You mentioned something about real estate offices on the second floor. Did I hear you correctly?
Yeah, so we heard from the community that the use of real estate offices or property management offices are not a viable town center land use. So we are recommending in these amendments that those uses can be allowed, but provided that they're either on the second floor or in the rear, they're not the store frontage along Highway 28.
We heard many times from the community. And we want to for uses, people coming and going, create that vibrant town center. And that Tahoe City in particular, feedback was we've seen enough property managers and real estate offices along our town center ground floor.
How would that be enforced though?
It would be through, sorry,
No.
it would be for new businesses coming forward. We can't take away, the existing businesses there. But if a new business wanted to come forward when they're coming into, kind of the front counter to coordinate moving into that space or to get their business license, et cetera, we would tell them that that's not allowed on the ground floor.
Okay, so even if a real estate business would buy the building, own the property, they would be subject to those
Correct.
restrictions. What if it's just one floor?
It wouldn't be allowed to go in there.
Additional questions?
Yes, onto the ongoing density issue. I mean, if we're like in the grid is allowing multiple multi-person dwellings, is how are we not increasing density?
They're allowed today at 15 units per acre maximum. So they would still be allowed in the future at 15 units per acre maximum.
Well, they were expanded though, is like multi-use, the multi-person
Yeah.
dwelling, people per acre though, is in Kings Beach, town center sub-districts. They changed from 25 to 60, that's a 40% increase.
I'd have to look up that one. There were a few scenarios in which the persons per acre was actually incorrect. And so we made them the same across different zone districts so that they would be equivalent. I can look that one up now and get
changes,
back to you on that.
changes in the district, specifically, Tahoe City mixed use and, Kings Beach, North Tahoe East. There were changes. And then, of course, my question from single family dwellings on the lake side and the town center, which you answered on Friday.
Yeah. I can clarify that one
Yeah.
too, just because we talked about it, but
Yeah.
everyone else didn't hear that conversation that
Thank you.
under the code today, single family like condos are allowed in the town center. But under our amendments, they would be allowed only under certain circumstances, and it would have to be either capped at, if we say 15% of a mixed use project. So if 15% of a project is condos, maybe that helps the project pencil out, is what, we've heard from our economists. Or they would be allowed only if 50% of the single family condos were deed restricted to achievable. My guess is most developers are probably not going to build pure condos and deed restrict half of them to achievable. So you're not going to be able to see a lot of brand new single family condos come in under these amendments.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions from Kat or from Nicole?
No, they're shaking their heads no.
Rebecca? Sounds good.
I'm good.
Maybe you still got more?
Always, but yes, I really think if we could have the opportunity to hear from the public and their questions.
Perfect. All right.
We have about 5 questions in the chat that I could read aloud if you'd like. I don't know how you want to handle that for.
Let's hold off until if those folks want to make public comment, or we can read those at the end of public comment in the room.
Okay.
So we're gonna move into the public comment process now. I think our agenda, does our agenda outline, is it a same timeline? Same minutes of public comment, is that?
It's really up to you, depending on how many want to comment. Usually it's 3 minutes, but it's totally up to.
Can we gauge with a show of hands, how many of you would like to stand up to make verbal public comment tonight? Okay, so we're gonna go with 2 minutes of public comment. To accommodate I think we've got about 40 people online and about 50 people in the room. So if you would like to make public comment, we'll invite you to stand up and come to the podium. Please state your name for the record. And if we could kindly ask maybe just 1 or 2 of you to queue up behind who's standing so that we can kind of move through our public comments relatively quickly. We would appreciate that. And
I can time them.
Kaylin will be our timer here. Maybe she'll give you a little wave when you're getting to the 10-second mark. And you'll have 2 minutes for public comment. Would you like to start us off, Regina?
Okay,
I certainly like to do that. I want you to know that I've been in this community a very long time and I have fought very hard.
Could you share your name for the public record?
Gina Straber, Kings Beach. And at one time I was a member of NTRAC. So I will tell you this, I fought very long for improvements in this community. And I do remember many years ago, an executive from Caltrans taking me by the arm and shaking a finger in my face in this very building, telling me that we will never put roundabouts in Kings Beach. But we fought and we fought and we got them. But I'm going to tell you right now, what I heard in this room for me is a disaster for my community. And I'm going to fight it as long as it takes to fight it. And I'm going to go door to door if I have to, and let them know that this will destroy the character of our small community. And as much as I would like to see the things that we had originally planned, I'm realizing now that all the work we did, the years and years and years that we put in to come up with a community plan where we sat in small, I remember the round tables we had in this building, and we all broke up into committees. And we worked so hard to come up with a community plan and had it passed. And then we all went home thinking, oh, good, now we've got things settled. And now all these amendments are coming up and destroying all that work that we have done. I beg you people to think logically. How are we preserving our environment? How are we making it more environmentally beneficial? How are we improving the environmental conditions? And how, in God's sakes, in all matter of logic, are we not affecting density in this town when we are going with these proposals? You cannot listen to this and think critically and come to the conclusion that this is going to benefit our community. It is going to be a disaster for us. And I think we need, as a community, to get the word out, and we need to warn people what is happening. We need to come together on this. That's what I have to say. I have a lot more to say, but I know my 2 minutes are up.
Yeah, hi, I'm Nichols, North Tahoe Preservation Alliance. It defies logic how all these added uses in Tahoe Vista and Lake Forest too, and added densities but you claim there's no density added height. Well, why do you need it if there's no? It's really, what about giving us a clear, simple document that gives these changes? This was so much gobbledygook. Really, nobody can understand it. So it's just a simple, what are the changes? This is what, and this is the evidence we have that this is going to work. Not like the prosperity people. I mean, there, it's some people that own condos in South Shore and, the beach club and, and then the BAE, the consultants, they were in on the 2012 community regional plan update. It didn't work. You're using them again. What about a fresh look? Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, my name is Dale Bowen. I live over Tahoe Park and full-time resident. I have an issue with regards to, I understand what you're saying about less parking and so forth, although I think that would be giving incentives to developers to not provide parking. However, people still need cars. They're going to be using cars. I worked in Aspen for 7 years. We had one of the most phenomenal, I worked at the Roaring Fork Transportation Authority. It's the bus system there. Buses run every 15 to 20 minutes and go to all the residential areas and provide service. We don't have anything like that. You can't ride your bicycle here. I worked at the polls yesterday. Let me tell you, you can't be walking, you can't be riding a bicycle. You need your car to get home. We don't have services that support lack of cars. It just doesn't, we have snow. It's a completely different environment than San Francisco, ride your bike to work, do this, do that, do something else. But this is a much different climate. And I don't think giving incentives to the developers to do less parking would help in anything at all. And frankly, I don't want to see big hotels here. And how is anybody going to get out of the area when you have 50 more hotel rooms? You've already approved accessory dwellings, therefore you've got more vehicles there, and you get a fire coming through. No mitigation has been done by the state to reduce wildfire. I'm sorry, they can say this all they want, but they have not done anything. I walk in the forest almost every day except when the snow falls. And let me tell you, there's so much dead wood out there. There's a lot of people that could have jobs cleaning some of this dead wood up and reducing the fire dangers that we have. We don't have a way to get out of town. You add more people, even less. And frankly, I agree with everybody else. We moved here and I live here because I like being in the forest and I like the rural community. I don't see that we need a lot more development. I mean, why do we need more development? More tax dollars? Is that what you're looking for? We moved here because we like the rural community and the environment. Thanks. Appreciate it.
I would really appreciate it if we could kind of queue up a little bit just to keep the public comment moving. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Alex Morolatos. I own and operate the Morolatos Lakeshore Resort.
I championed a workforce housing project for 144 units and then scaled down to 70 units from 2002 to 2007 in the middle of Tahoe Vista. We learned about moderate and achievable workforce housing lessons then. After that, I sat on the Tahoe Vista Community Plan Working Group that this body is seeking modifications to the work we did. And unlike the previous speaker, I acknowledge and realize that we worked on something that was undefined and untested. And since then, we've had multiple projects come forward and test the code and test the logic of the work we did. And my opinion is the work here today is simply a result of good, hard work by great staff and a lot of people who have asked a lot of tough questions and asked why the code of Placer County and TRPA are not better aligned. And if you doubt me, oh, I'm also on the board of directors of the Truckee Tahoe Community Foundation, which has amongst its 3 initiatives, the work for the Mountain Housing Council that brings together 27 constituents in the North Tahoe region to develop innovative solutions to the workforce challenges that we all face. And the projects that have come forward asking for these changes inside the Tahoe Basin represent the unique challenges that all developers, all owners, anyone who wishes to invest have to address. It's very different outside of the basin in Truckee. We have these challenges. We must address them. Over the last 2 years, I made offers and went into contracts on 2 different motels on Highway 28 with an intent to take what is illegal workforce housing, invest to make it a walkable workforce entity that people actually are walking to their jobs, walking to the bar, walking to the grocery store, only to find, and I see reflected today, a number of issues that were raised. I walked away from 2 escrows because I wasn't willing to make the necessary investments to overcome the differences between Placer County and TRPA code. Today, you stand here with an opportunity to do the duty that is necessary to move this community forward and evolve the way we develop workforce housing in this region.
Hey, everybody, Andrew Ryan here, local business owner. My wife and I fixed up a number of properties in Kings Beach. We started with a Foothill Motel on the east of town. It was pretty much defunct when we took it over. We fixed that one up. We then did the building right next door, which was had all kinds of red flags, and they were selling hard drugs out of that. We made that my engineering office. Our current project right now is the redevelopment of the former Agate Bay Hospital behind the Bank of the West. We're working on that one. And the affordable housing challenges are well documented here, but the small business challenges are huge. I'm not some master business person. I'm fiscally insane by making redevelopment decisions in Kings Beach. It is nearly impossible, and we're always upside down. So the reason we have so many vacant, boarded up buildings in Kings Beach is because we have very onerous rules on small business. When I reviewed all of these amendments, I would say that most of them are targeted to small business, especially when you look at that threshold criteria. It's small business, it's not big mega projects that are benefiting. Now, I'm also an area plan member for the area plan when that was done, and we adjudicated height in there. Not Ann was there and Billy was there. We went back and forth on height, right? And we as a group compromised, and we landed on 48 feet. And then 48 feet turned to 56 feet. So I'm not a supporter of the height amendment, but I am a supporter of many very positive things within these amendments. They will really matter to small business people like my wife and I trying to turn over these defunct properties we have. Now, regarding parking, reading between the lines from what I heard, I think most of the frustration is really about the numbers of cars that come into the basin and not the actual parking at our businesses. If you compare Kings Beach to downtown Truckee, Brickletown, Kings Beach has twice as many parking spots that are formal and half the commercial floor area as downtown Truckee. So we have an abundance of parking, and that doesn't count all the ad hoc parking that happens back in the grid. At the parking spots at my business, we have to defend them from people that are wanting to park there to not pay at the beach. Right. So it's a really tough situation. So the parking reform is hugely important, and it's not going to benefit takeovers by corporations. It's going to benefit our small business people. So I commend a lot of what I saw in there today. And anybody that has questions, I'd be happy to walk you around town and show you what we're struggling with and why these things would matter. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Christina Hill, and I would like to know, I think it would be helpful in these type of situations if we knew what findings needs to be made in order to make these amendments, have these amendments approved. I know I recently took part in a Washoe County meeting where they're proposing, single-family dwellings in what was a multifamily zone, and they're gonna have to amend the Washoe County area plan as well, and TRPA. And so, but the findings that they had to make to amend the area plan were pretty significant, and I would think that's an important thing you should share with the public to know what findings are having to be made to make these amendments. Thank you.
Hello, Rob Olson. I live in Alpine Meadows, 16-year local. I'm the president of the Tahoe City Downtown Association. And most of these updates and amendments are items that our board and committees have talked about over the years and have been asking for, and we are in favor of these amendments. We feel like this would help small businesses, like Andrew's saying, and help our communities and densify what is been slated for density and leave the rest of it rural. Personally, I'm a father of 3 kids. I'm a professional. I'm an architect, a contractor, and a real estate broker. In general, I'd like to see more limits to short-term rentals in neighborhoods and move them to town centers in special areas. And I feel like this would help that. As a way to help this happen, I think also I'd like to see the max height limit that's being proposed still be allowed, but not to, but lodging doesn't have to be included in there. If it does have residential workforce housing, it doesn't necessarily need to have lodging as a part to that to get that higher density. Our family does own a number of properties. We're not working with other clients at this moment, but we ourselves would like to do projects such as Andrew's working on to try to get more workforce housing for employees, because half of our employees don't live in the area, and we'd like to see them live in the area that we live in. So thank you.
My name's John Maddenbold, and I'm a year-round Kings Beach resident, and my wife and I own 2 multi-unit apartment buildings, one of which is really an old motel. And we're really encouraged with what I hear tonight about being able to develop, and we need more density. We need workforce housing desperately in this community. Everyone's heard about the dishwashers making $35 an hour because you can't get anybody to come up and work here. So we provide housing right now to over 30 locals, and frankly, we don't need a lot of parking, and half the people work in town, and many of them take the bus. And so parking is like a hindrance to us developing these single-story, one's a set of cabins and one's a 10-unit motel. And so we want to go up, we want to go out, and we don't need a lot of parking regulations because, as I say, half the people work in town and take the bus. Thanks.
Sean.
Hi, my name is Nick Spiel. I live in South Lake Tahoe, so I'm not going to go make any suggestions for what you all should do here. I'm really interested to learn about what you all are, all the different perspectives you have on this, because we're facing the same issues in South Lake Tahoe. Right, too much traffic, too many cars, too much space allocated for that, and not enough space allocated for housing when people are having to travel longer and longer distances. Move off of the mountain in order to find a place to live. I've heard from a few people here who don't want to create spaces for people to live. And I'm curious to hear more, as I know more of you will come up to speak about what alternatives you propose, right? As school enrollment is going down, as our population is declining, and just being replaced by short-term rentals. Is that what we want here? I'd love to hear more. Thank
Get
you all.
rid of Airbnb.
Thanks, Nick. Other public comment in the room?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nick Exline. I'll touch on a bit more about me really quickly. As I walked in today, I heard people talk a lot about the different hats they wear. We all wear different hats, and I want to touch on these amendments through the different hats I wear. I'm a small business owner. The number one issue I have is housing. I'm a locally elected official in South Lake Tahoe. I'm a utility district board, and anyone that's a South Lake Tahoe resident, thank you for the votes yesterday. Number one issue we have, housing. I am a planning consultant, and I get to work on amazing projects in beautiful places all over this basin and beyond, including Kings Beach, and I'm always welcomed here. And what I can tell you in those experiences is developing affordable housing is nearly impossible. And so I'm in support of any amendment that's being put forward that's going to incentivize affordable housing. We need it desperately. Other hats I wear, I'm a climate change advocate and started a climate change nonprofit. And I can tell you the single greatest output of climate emitting gas here in the Tahoe Basin is our energy inefficient structures. We need to develop mechanisms where we can start to restore our communities and the buildings that have become so dilapidated and so energy efficient. As we look to Lake Clarity, we need to start talking about the installation of BMPs. Huge swaths of the downtown of your community don't have the basic water quality treatment systems needed to ensure we can protect our lake clarity and quality. So as we look to the housing, we look to the problems of our community. I think, Nick Spiel said it, great. We need to look to, work to each other. And I think, these amendments and what's being brought forth are incredibly powerful and a really amazing opportunity for you to lead the way for the rest of the basin and show how you can make a community work from an environmental perspective, from a housing perspective, because people are the lifeblood of our communities of Tahoe. Thank you so much.
Good evening, Samir Tuma, Board Directors for the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association. In that capacity, I talk to small businesses every day, all summer long, all winter long, in the shoulder seasons, and everybody has the same challenge. There's not enough housing for the workforce. And what we have in this area is an incentive, a set of incentives that incentivize developers to build bigger houses, to build single family houses, and not necessarily to build smaller units, micro units, type of housing that would be affordable for the workforce. So people commute from Reno, people commute from all over the place in order to come to work in the restaurants, to work in the retail shops, to work in all the businesses that serve all of us every day. We need more workforce housing. I think a lot of what is being proposed here will go a long way. I think there's still some major obstacles. A lot of it has to do with it costs the same in many regards to build a single family home as it does to build a 500 square foot unit as far as permits go and hookup fees and all the other associated fees that you have to pay. So if you want to build a 500 or 700 square foot unit that they can accommodate a small family or a couple of workers, you have to pay the same fees, a lot of them, that you do for a single family home. That needs to change, because if we want to get these small units on the ground that can serve the workforce, we need to create an incentive, a set of incentives that address that. I think what you're proposing here today goes a long way towards workforce housing and creating more opportunities so that small businesses can continue to survive. But the number of businesses that I've talked that have talked about going out of business closed 2 or 3 days a week during the middle of summer, where that's the only time they can make any money because the owners are working 60, 70 hours a week and they can't get any employees. That has to stop. We need more workforce housing, please. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Paul Miller. I live on the West Shore. I just want to say BMPs, if we're going to build anything, very important. Let's take care of our Lake Clarity. That's why we all live here. It's one of the natural wonders of the world. Another thing is we have a lot of hotels that are sitting rotting. It used to be that there were a number of beds that were allowed to be rented in Tahoe Basin, and everybody fought for those beds. Now we have STRs, so all our houses sit empty. waiting for someone to rent it for a week out of the year. It's ruining our neighborhoods. But you guys are fine with the STRs and now you want more hotels, more beds. And everybody's been talking about, there's no restaurants, there's nobody to work at the Safeway. You know, so all this planning you guys are doing, you're forgetting about the community that you're killing, allowing all of these changes and amendments which don't support our community. Thank you.
Oh, I'd like to say something else.
Well, we're gonna wait until everyone that would like to speak in the room have had a chance to make their public.
Oh,
comment.
somebody else talk?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Yeah.
Hi, Billy KB. Would like to say thanks that everybody's looking into these situations now. Because I can go back to 1997 when I read the draft EIR on the highway through town, how it had destroyed the look of it and the economics, and tried to explain to them, we need to catch the water and treat it, just like he was saying, the BMPs. We have the science now to do it. We have all kinds of different coverages that can work. So I think we need to look at that. And then also sitting on the planning, when we did this, on the vision plan, we did discuss the height. So I don't think we need to go that extra height. And I can give you an example. The Tahoe beachfront residences right here on the side. They're 34 feet, 1 inches tall, and they're 3-story. And the scenic corridors opened up now. We don't have the police over there, the fire department, drug overdoses and all of that, and the tax base is increased. So I think we can look at some of this stuff and take maybe a closer look and make some of this stuff work better. And for instance, as far as the lot size goes, the Brockway Vista subdivision was created in the 20s. It was 25 feet by 125, so that enabled us to go in and get those ghetto trailer parks, the 3 of them, and put up the new homes and the townhouses, and they turned out to be pretty workable. Even though at the time, when you drive up the street, the investors and the lenders would lock their door and we go, hey, nobody's stealing anything. It's a great little town. It just looks a little bad. And, you know, just saying. And that gets me to this now, is it's really hard for the redevelopment to happen. And we needed to get the BMPs in, get the people in and the works. And here's one of the reasons why. Take a look at it. I mean, all these boarded up buildings, I'm just saying, it's really horrible. In fact, there's federal statutes called blockbusting, where the mafia would go in and board buildings up, right? And, you know, drive the values down. And then they bring in, you know, like a motorcycle gang and then the opposite across the street. I mean, we got to get moving here. There's no doubt about it. And I realize we can't address everything perfectly, but at least this sounds like a really good start to start doing something. But I don't think we need the heights and some of the over density, but we really got to move ahead and start looking at this stuff. There's no doubt about it. So, thanks.
Anyone else? Okay.
My name is Robin Lewis and I live in Tahoma down on the West Shore. And my main concern is housing, like a lot of people here. And please somehow make it easier for builders to build smaller, affordable houses. In my neighborhood, I have not seen a small house built in 30 years. I've lived there 40. And all I see are monster homes. I have at least 6, 7 neighbors who are contractors. That's all they build. And they say it's because of the permitting process. Plus they want to make money. So it's all second homeowners. I have hardly any full-time neighbors. I feel really isolated in my community. And I'm wondering about these empty, is there enough land for housing here? Since we're letting them build all the monster homes on every single lot, at least in Tahoma. I don't know about the other places, but I don't think Sunnyside has any lots for sale. They're all built out. Every place I know is built out. And I know a ton of people living in vans and in campers on their trucks. No place to park. Can't we start there and give them a parking lot? At least to park in while they go work at the ski area or the restaurant? And what about the campgrounds? Why not get some kind of coordination with them for these tiny homes or people in vans to park and live during the ski season? So we can have more employees for our restaurants and stores and things like that. And the other pet peeve I have is the land that was bought up, tons of land with houses bought up by a single person that's doing nothing. They're all sitting up, boarded up. Is there anything we can do, or do people have rights to do that? We can't shut them down. We can't buy from them. I mean, I don't know. I don't know the laws. Does anyone know?
Where?
Thanks, Robin. We'll elevate your question when we're done with public comment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Robin.
Good evening Supervisor Gustafson, members of the North Tahoe Regional Advisory Committee, staff, and ladies and gentlemen. My name is Steve Teixeira, and I've been a longtime resident of the basin. Next year it'll be 50 years. And I've been involved in pretty much every one of the planning processes that are the foundation of this document. The first speaker this evening talked about how, you know, if we adopt this, it's going to be catastrophic for the community. If we don't adopt it, it'll be catastrophic for the community for the reasons that you have heard. And in my view, rural doesn't mean run down. Rural should have a quality attached to it. We have some rural and we have some urban, but the rural isn't all quality the way that it should be. We have a lot of signs in this community here, development proposal pending, because the process is so difficult and challenging. We have a number of people, both locals and other folks, that want to invest in this community to improve the quality of our experience, to improve our business community. This issue of housing is critical. Now we have people coming up here, you know, to come to work. So there's more traffic from that. We have a declining population. So this is something that I think the staff has done a really good job of putting together these studies and these assessments over the years to see, okay, we did something in 2012, we did something in 2016, we're building blocks. Now we see what is working and some of the things that aren't working, and we're going to address the things that aren't working. So I urge you, when you come to your meeting on November 30th, to pass this forward to the Board of Supervisors and let the process continue. Thank you.
Good evening, Scott Teach. I rented my first cabin on Fox in early 1980. Address a couple of things here real quick regarding workforce housing. When it comes to these, you know, first of all, the processes need to be difficult because otherwise things would go rampant here. But with these big developers, you need to make them do the workforce housing on the front end. They're going to tell you they've got to do their market force sales first so they can afford it. If that's the answer, they don't really have the money. Parking. The county, you guys have bailed out a couple of developers more than once. There's parking lots in this town that are surrounded by chain link fencing. Open those up. I want to understand that a taco truck from Sparks can come here without a use permit and compete with Las Panchitas in the burrito window. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't get that. Let's see here. I'd like to encourage you to stop using the word sustainable when all of your plans are really based on growth, not sustainability. It's all based on growth. Let me see what else do I have here. Emily and Stacy, you know, if the TRPA is so bad, break the MOU. Washoe County doesn't have one. Go your own way. You know, stop blaming them for everything. By their own admission recently, the TRPA said when they were asked what they're good at, what they say? Picking up trash. Right? Didn't they? Yeah. So anyway, thanks for listening. And sorry.
Any other public comment in the room?
I'll say one thing.
So, we're gonna go to public comment online before we repeat folks in the room. We want to give everyone a space to make a
I don't
public
think I have one
comment.
thing I want to say.
Thanks for understanding. We want to hear from everyone.
Ask me, but I will be there with comments.
Ready? Okay. Brooksley, you can unmute your mic and talk.
You still on?
Brooksley. Okay, go to the next one. Scarlett, you can unmute your mic and give your comments.
Are you sure you're still online?
I do not know why it keeps thinking I'm raising my hand. I swear I'm not.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Tim, you can unmute your mic and give your comments.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hi, my name is Tim Delaney. I've been in the Tahoe Basin since 1970. And I'm greatly concerned here. You know, I feel that the general public, for the most part, doesn't know all this is going on. And I have seen the environmental destruction in Tahoe. It's incredible. The last thing you want is, you know, more people being pumped into the Tahoe Basin. You know, the thing is I hear all this stuff about business and all kinds of things going on here. You know, folks are conflicted. Your environment in Lake Tahoe is destroyed completely. My kids even chuckle about it. You know, it's just, you know, I'm out there on the East Shore beaches and I'm the guy that picks up all the trash. It's horrendous. And a lot of the tourism and folks that visit the area, they don't understand, even new people that have come in there to live, they don't understand how sensitive the environment is. You know, when you're going down to the beach, they walk downhill like humans do, straight down. They don't cross the hill on the trails. So what do you think's going to happen when you have all these humans fan out in the forest and they're all walking downhill? They cut into the hill and then it snows and it rains. And what happens with water? Well, it's going to follow the path of least resistance and it's going to go down the hill and carve out the entire hillside. That's happening all over the Tahoe Basin. And you can see it on the East Shore. The roadbeds, you know, wiped out, you know, there's no enforcement. You know, you have cars parking in the middle of the road. It's a complete calamity. You have the helicopter buzzing by all the time, the seaplane doing a touch and go on a busy day on Labor Day. You know, it's ludicrous. There are too many people. And I understand that everyone wants to make money and everything, but you know, you have a limited amount of water. That's all you've got. And on the other side of the mountain down there in Reno and Carson, they're just adding houses all over the place, just building them like the water's endless. No way. So I think what needs to happen now is the federal government needs to be drawn into all this. That's, you know, it needs to happen. And folks need to have an honest discussion with, you know, amongst each other and take a hard look at what they've done to the environment in Tahoe. Nothing is sustainable. Nothing is affordable. The environment's ruined. And I think before anybody moves forward on anything, everyone needs to get together and have a real discussion about all this stuff and put a stop to it. So, you know, I had clean water. You know, some of you folks don't realize that you might have been drinking lead out of your water, you know, because of that AT&T cable that's over there. You know,
And
I think.
can you please wrap up your comments? You've hit your 2 minutes.
All right. So I'm against it. I don't want anything to move forward. I want the public to be drawn into it more. I want all this shut down. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Crystal, you can unmute your mic and give your comments.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'll lower my hand. Good evening, committee members. I am Crystal Sawyer White, Senior Program Manager for the Tahoe Prosperity Center. Let me begin by thanking you and your staff for their efforts to remain focused on the workforce housing issue in the North Tahoe Truckee region. I want to convey the Tahoe Prosperity Center's strong support for various proposed Tahoe Basin Area Plan Code and amendments. We realize you have tried to include some additional incentives such as added height and reduced parking to encourage workforce housing, but we feel the county should be doing more in specific areas. As you know, we are desperate in need of local workforce housing, specifically 3,568 under market rate homes just in the North Tahoe and Truckee region. And yet a 40-unit housing project in construction currently in Placer County is in danger of failing because it isn't going to pencil. If we truly want developers to build local workforce housing, then we absolutely need to improve our incentives. Specifically, the Tahoe Prosperity Center feels that the following changes are needed to encourage more local housing development that benefits the community. Add significant coverage, height, and density incentives if the housing is deed restricted to local workers. Do not place AMI restrictions or add additional barriers such as public art, even though we all love public art. If you aren't paying for it, then it isn't an incentive. Continue to reduce parking for all housing related projects in town centers where residents can walk, bike, and take public transit. None of our Tahoe communities are what we would consider truly dense. A hotel is typically 40 units an acre, so allowing 20 units and even up to 30 an acre for smaller homes can even break a project. Allow more flexibility in the types of projects. We appreciate the changes included to allow for tiny homes and for modular technology and creativity for pre-approved ADUs could go a long way towards adding options for local workers. We appreciate your efforts and hope you keep encouraging and innovative programs like the Workforce Housing Reservation Program, along with the incentives we noted above. Thank you.
Thank you. Erin, you can unmute your mic and give your comments.
Hello, my name is Erin White and I am a local community member and also a mental health care provider. I love all the comments. One thing I wanted to add to everything I'm hearing today is a humanistic perspective. From what I see in the mental health care world, working with children and families, is that a lot of families are stressed about having the long commutes, worrying about housing. And this is really a huge impact we have in our community. We have an opportunity here today to provide an opportunity for families to have upward growth. If there are hotel developments, more opportunities for restaurants, there are family development growth happening there. More kids have more security. I hear it every day. I know that a lot of us don't have that impact and the insight that I do, but I just want to add that layer of perspective. I also want to warn, being a community member in another area, that if we don't do something with all the boarded up areas, they may potentially turn into storage units. I have heard this. I live very close to Buc-ee's, and there's fear that a lot of units, because a lot of abandoned properties may turn into potentially storage units. We have a great here to add workforce housing to allow upward growth for families, a lot of family wellness, student wellness, and I think this is pigeonholing that there's going to be trash in the community and a lot of negative impact from more people is really narrow-minded, and we should open up our minds to allow for the growth of the community and the wellness for people outside of just the prosperity for businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Elise, you can unmute your mic and give your comments. Elise, you can unmute your mic and give your comments.
Hello, this is Elise Becht. I'm an architect and engineer on the North Shore for 30 years. I love the idea of mixed use. I'd love to see that in our country more and more, and especially here. Tiny homes, tiny rooms with community kitchens and food service that you all mentioned, but also we do need, as one woman mentioned, winter and summer RV, van, and trailer parks with heated restrooms facilities for our workers that come here. I am concerned about the reduction of parking requirements until our public transportation is better. And there are parking permit programs on the North Shore. So allow an exemption of coverage for off-street, open, pervious pavers designated for occupants of buildings, and then have a mitigation fee for that exemption for that temporary coverage to go towards bike paths that will be built wider, up to say 10 feet wide, so it's safe truly for bikers to really move and commute on electric bikes while there are walkers there. And it can be used as a way for exiting for emergency evacuations. So I'd also like to see a requirement for at least a moderate level of modular construction. We just really need to make our construction more efficient in the basin. And the workers are coming from Reno and Carson because they don't have anywhere to live here at this time. But we want them to be here. But on the other hand, at this point in time, we need to require modular construction at some level for these projects. I understand you're doing many of these incentives to encourage developers to pay for ADUs, but please keep in mind that you can reduce the scale on the road of some of these projects if you don't, if you get these affordable, if you don't force them to do the affordable housing as much in those buildings, but instead make it easier for the private homeowners to have deed restricted ADUs for local workers. It's bureaucratically very expensive for homeowners.
Lisa, please wrap up your comments. You've reached your 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron Vanderpool, you can unmute your mic and give your comments.
Yeah, thank you. Aaron Vanderpool. I'm a 41-year resident. I hear a lot about housing and transportation and everything. I mean, we all care about these issues, but during this, I hear a lot of vague talk, but no details. I'm not convinced, and nobody's sold me on any of these amendments. Nobody's put forth anything that would sell me on supporting these. As far as, I mean, everybody's always talking about transportation and mobility, but nobody wants to deal with the issue of bringing people to and from the basin instead of just bringing them here and moving them around. As far as the mobile vendor thing that came up, one major concern I have about that is a lot of these mobile vendors have air horns and ice cream music and a lot of the noise that could bring to our community centers and our residential areas adjacent to that. And it sounds like a lot of these, I don't really understand this mixed use thing. It just seems like a lot of requirements, such as like restricting the use on ground levels that are going to increase demand for further development. If they can't put their businesses on the ground level, they're going to need to build other things. And I don't know, a lot of these restrictions seem like they're going to just put more demand on development. It doesn't really make much sense to me. Like it sounded like restricting condos, for example. It doesn't make much sense. So again, you haven't sold me on that. And you know, the real issue we're dealing with here is greater than us. It's wealth inequality. Like Placer County put, you know, these incentive to like $24,000 for rental of long-term to locals, but they're basically incentivizing people to own more homes as rentals. Why aren't we just restricting short-term rentals outright? This is ridiculous. It's a slippery slope. Short-term rentals are a commercial use. Why are we having commercial use in our residential areas, which is why I don't understand mixed use. It doesn't make sense to me. Why are we talking about all this stuff if we're not addressing that first? We need to disincentivize wealth, and we need to, that's the main issue, is wealth inequality. That's what we're all facing. It's greater than us, but we need to do small things to bring
Can you
wealth.
wrap up your comments? You've hit your 2 minutes.
Yes, thank you for the warning. We're just really destroying the very thing that people come to Tahoe and we're here for and come to see. Thank you.
Thank you. Clayton, you can unmute your mic and give your comments.
Hey, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So Clayton Humphreys, I'm a publisher of Tahoe Quarterly Magazine, local realtor, and vice president of the North Tahoe Business Association. A couple of things. I want to give a shout out to the Tahoe area regional transit. You know, I think we've really overlooked the fact that they've done an incredible job. My mother lives in Kings Beach on Salmon Avenue. She takes transit every day to my house over in Tahoe Vista. So very useful. But not totally used, right? There's plenty of seats on the bus available. You know, so it's super exciting to know that they're doing all the work that they do. As a vice president of the NTBA, I want to see small businesses flourish. I want to see our community flourish. We need an area where they can flourish, and I believe that Kings Beach has tremendous opportunity for that. I'm in support of these amendments fully, basically because I'm excited to see where Kings Beach can go. You know, my daughter goes to Kings Beach Elementary, and we walk in the commercial core district there daily. Truly enjoy it, but it's kind of sad to see that we don't have any boutiques or restaurants or places where we can really go and enjoy our afternoon in that community. All of our friends in Truckee don't want to come over and visit us. We always have to go over to see them, basically because there's nowhere really to go here. When it comes to short-term rentals, you know, Placer County has an abundance of permits available right now. If you were to try to start a short-term rental, there's over 700 permits available today, unlike Truckee, who has already met their permit cap. So as a person that lives here locally, I don't really have a problem with short terms, but at the same time, I'm in support of seeing a hotel here, and I'm also in support of seeing some more businesses here. When it comes to our community, I feel like we're all rather isolated. When we talk about mental health, which one of the previous speakers mentioned, there's not a lot of community camaraderie, and I think we need more of that. And I think we need meeting centers in order to make that happen. So just to see the commercial core district change and provide a little bit more breathing room for all of us to get together would be great. Yeah, that's really all I have.
Thank you, Clayton. Ryan, you can unmute your mic and give your comments.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Ryan Wexler, Kings Beach. A lot of good comments already. I think we got to be really careful with these amendments because they're big changes, and we need to step carefully. And I think someone said earlier, similarly, there's no point in solving these housing problems and business needs if you ruin the character of the place we live. I found the presentation be a bit confusing. It kind of opened with this concept of we're absolutely not increasing building height or density, and then you told me you're increasing building height to 61 and 72 feet. You're removing all the number of floor restrictions, adding more multi-use housing. That felt very disingenuous to me. I'm a bit confused by that. In general, I'm some of these amendments are interesting. Some of them I oppose, but I think the main goal of this was to address the housing problems, and I don't know how you can do that without addressing the short-term rentals. We need to pull back on the short-term rentals, not just put a cap. We need to reduce. The short-term rentals used to be long-term rentals. That was our workforce housing. Ironically, there was talk about incentivizing hotels to be developed, but it seems like you created an impossible competition situation. A hotel has to meet commercial building codes, ADA standards, health code requirements, and of course they're commercially zoned. Yet an STR can circumvent all this in a residentially zoned place. I don't even know how that's legal. So the bottom line is I think without including a substantial reduction in STRs with these amendments, we're missing the goal here. And I'll tell you what, if you want to make exceptions to the code, why aren't we talking about allowing 100-foot dormitory style buildings on site at the major employer and resort properties like North Star and Palisades. I think everyone would support that. These are the big employers, and they have the property. And it'd be easy to incentivize. You just say, you guys can't do new
Ryan, can you
development.
please wrap up your
Yeah,
comments? You've reached your 2
sure.
minutes. Thank you.
Sure. So again, please consider adding a reduction to short-term rentals in these amendments. Thank you.
Thank you. Liz, you can unmute your mic and give your comments.
Hi, I'm Liz Penniman. My family's been in Tahoe for about 50 years. And the premise of these amendments, one of them is to make it a year-round place. And if that could be removed, I feel the lake breathing a sigh of relief when everybody goes home. I feel the mountains and the animals get their rest time and restoration time. And I know it's tough on businesses not to be year-round, but the lake is the thing and the nature is the thing. And we work around that. We don't make it work for us. I think that's about it. Thanks for the presentation.
Thank you. Judith, you can unmute your mic and give your comments. Judith, you can unmute your mic and give your comments. All right, Tony, you can unmute your mic and give your comments.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Tony Karwowski. I'm the CEO of the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association. I'm also a 20-year resident of the region. I have 2 boys in the local public school system. My wife's a teacher in the public school system. We're ingrained in the community, and I'm really passionate about this. And I'm also wanting to share that, you know, right out of the gate, the NLTRA definitely supports the TBAP amendments that the county's proposed, and we'd like to commend the county, number one, for taking the time to listen and create these to bring the proper developments we need to bring our workforce housing back to Tahoe. And the reason why I say back is I've been here long enough to see this isn't, you know, a few people have said tonight, like, it's the dishwashers, it's the lift operators, it's the seasonal workers at the resorts. That's true. And a lot of what we've lost, those 2,000 residents that we saw on the slide earlier today, or since 2000, those are families that were here who were our first responders. They were our grocery store clerks. They were our teachers. Our community's been hollowed out. And this is our opportunity to stand up and own a solution. Is it the perfect solution? No. Is it going to work by itself? No, absolutely not. It's going to take a coordinated effort on the parts of many different people who are already working behind the scenes to help make it happen. There are many different levers that need to be pulled. I also have sat on the Tahoe Truckee Transportation Management Association and was the board secretary over a 5-year period, and had the privilege to work with some incredibly talented people in the transit field who understand the issues we face, how to coordinate workforce housing developments with transit routes, with fixed transit routes, and with micro transit. Can you still hear me? I had somebody else's name come on my screen.
Yeah, we can, Tony.
Okay, thanks. And it's this coordination that's happening that's not being spoken about tonight. There is going to be an increase in TART Connect services in our region so that people can come to the North Tahoe Event Center from the neighborhood and not even have to worry about coming in and finding a place to park. There's going to be enhancements to other housing programs. The North Lake Tahoe Resort Association recently recommended that some return TOT funds be approved by the Placer County Board of Supervisors to support a landing locals program that's designed to convert short-term rental housing to workforce housing and incentivizing the owners to do that. There's just so many different pieces that we need to work on together to make this happen. And one of the core pieces to that are these amendments that Placer County's brought before us tonight. Thank you again for doing it, and thank you for hearing us.
Thank you, Tony. Judith, you can give your comments now, since I see you unmuted your mic.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. I'm Judy Tornese. I'm president of Friends of the West Shore. And I had a couple questions. First of all, I'd like to have someone confirm that Placer and TRPA will do a draft and a final EIR, EIS. Secondly, please clarify the communities that will be affected and impacted by these amendments. You mentioned the town centers of Kings Beach and Tahoe City, and also other residential districts. I assume that that means and applies to the West Shore communities of Sunnyside, Homewood, and Tahoma, but we need clarification. In particular, increasing height and density are major concerns to the West Shore community. This would cause more traffic congestion and exacerbate the problem of handling an emergency evacuation, which is a big concern to everyone. It also would change the rustic quality and the scale and character of these neighborhoods. And for instance, the current area plan for the West Shore, which I was involved in crafting, limits height on the lakeside to 2 stories, and on the mountainside, mostly 2 stories with some exceptions to 3 stories. So on the West Shore, we do want to keep the height and density limits. And also, any affordable housing should be consistent with the scale and character of the community. Thank you for the.
Thank you, Judith. And that's all I see on Zoom for public comment.
Thank you very much. All right, we're gonna take it back to the NTRAC now for any additional comments or questions. We aren't taking a vote tonight, so it's just comments or reflections that NTRAC members would like to make. And before I turn it over, I would just like to elevate the 2 questions that Judy just raised, which was, will there be a final EIR, EIS associated with these amendments, and what communities specifically do these amendments apply to?
So right now we are working on the environmental review. It is looking like an environmental impact report would not be required for this level of change. We are following the California Environmental Quality Act and National Environmental Policy Act and TRPA requirements for environmental review. For the communities that would be affected, the residential zone districts, there are 21 of them, so I have to go look and see which ones those are. On the West Shore, we're not proposing increasing any height. And density across the board, we are not increasing residential density from what it is now. So existing height and densities would still remain.
Thanks, Emily. Rebecca?
I'd like to thank all the members of the community, although a lot of them left, for coming tonight and sharing your thoughts with us. Most appreciated. I just would like to echo Jerry's sentiments to the public. Thanks for coming.
I third the motion and also the staff for their wonderful work, but I do have, would like to elevate one of the questions there. They said, I mean, we're looking at mostly redevelopment rather than development. Now, in the policy document, we have the number of vacant parcels and whatever, but it was based on 2013 data. I think that it'd be really interesting to see how many vacant parcels or how many acres. Is 2013, we had over 176 acres available and 441 parcels, the majority, of course, in Kings Beach, Tahoe Vista, Carnelian, Tahoe City. But it would really be, I think, interesting before we take a vote on the 30th in a virtual meeting on what we have available on undeveloped. And that's my only question at this point. Thank you.
Caitlin, can you help us go back to Kat or Nicole on the phone?
Absolutely. Looks like Kat unmuted.
Yeah, thanks, Caitlin. Yeah, I just wanted to comment. You know, I've heard a lot of things. I've seen this presentation many times in front of many different groups with a lot of different comments offered from various groups. I think these are wholeheartedly needed in our community. It addresses some of the major issues that many of this public have addressed tonight, workforce housing. I have had that impacted with my small business, and my employees have been displaced, thrown out of their rentals to be turned into short-term rentals. I've seen that happen many times through the years. I myself was unable to purchase a home here for many years because of the exorbitant price. Only during the recession could I purchase something. I do not want us to have to go back to recession to make it affordable for locals to be able to afford houses. So I think moving these density into our town centers, which then in turn moves our short-term rentals into the town centers to have lodging options instead of being in our residential communities, is very much needed in our community. I live in a condo complex where half of my neighbors are short-term rentals, and I've talked to many of them. They're very nice, mostly families. But the thing they say again and again is they would much rather stay in the town centers in Kings Beach and Tahoe City, but there is nowhere for them to stay. They'd rather be somewhere they can walk to town, they can walk to dine, they can go to events, they can go to the farmers markets and the concerts, and they'd rather have that and spend money instead of spending time traveling. They don't want to be in their cars riding everywhere to get to lodging, riding everywhere to get to where they want to go to dinner. So I think these are addressing many of these issues. I've also served on Tahoe City Downtown Association, on various committees with North Tahoe Business Association. I've been in countless meetings with Placer County on different roles, asking for some of these things, advocating for our business community and for our residents to get these short-term rentals out of our neighbors' neighborhoods and back into workforce housing. And I think they finally listened. I've been doing this for 10 years, banging my head against a wall at times. And many of these things are verbatim what we've asked for from our business associations. And so I thank the county for listening. Thank you.
I have just a brief comment. And a lot of it actually echoes what Kat just said, so I'll keep it even shorter. But you know, I came into this meeting a little nervous about what we were going to hear from the county staff in terms of the proposed amendments. And to be honest, I agree with Kat and think that these are some of the most responsive and thoughtful amendments that county staff has proposed to really address the root causes of a lot of the issues that we're seeing in our community. I think to look at this as an opportunity to do nothing would be a mistake by the county and for our community. And we need to recognize that to allow redevelopment in a way that benefits our community members and that actually solves some of the issues that we have, we're going to have some of these amendments that allow compromise and really promote, you know, the development of workforce housing. One of my only concerns with these types of amendments to these plans is that we often hear about other programs and other solutions such as transportation needs that aren't directly tied to this plan and are kind of promised as a separate effort. And that's the only place that I really see concern, is that, you know we need better transportation systems, but that's not addressed here. Is there a way to maybe marry the advances in our separate programs or separate solutions? You know, when these amendments come about, can there simultaneously be transportation solutions proposed by the transportation agency at the same time, so we can actually see the solutions working hand in hand? I know that that's hard to align from different agencies that are proposing these programs, but overall, I just want to thank county staff. I really think that this is some of the best amendments we've seen that are really addressing some of the causes of some of the strains and issues we have in the community. So thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. So I just wanted to share a couple of kind of summary thoughts before we move on tonight. want to echo the appreciation to the county for adding the various input sessions, responding to change the last item to an info item, adding another session. And it sounds like also meeting with some other constituencies along the way. I also just want to thank you guys for being so responsive. I heard someone request a summary set of recommendations. What are you doing in summary? That's what you gave to us last month when we came together. We said we need the red lines. You gave us the red line inline comments and people said it's too much. You just got to give us a summary. So I want to acknowledge just what a challenging position I think the county finds themselves in when the public responds. And I feel like you guys have done a really nice job of being responsive to this call for more public comment. I did just want to quickly summarize. We heard 26 public comments tonight by my estimation, and count 15 of those were positive. So more than half of the public comment we heard tonight was in positive support. So I would encourage our NTRAC members to keep that in mind when we move into our action item the next time we come together. But I would also just encourage our NTRAC members to continue to have these conversations in our community and hear what people have to think in our walkabouts. And then finally, I heard a couple things come up a couple different times. The emphasis on this idea of the deed restriction, folks being really in support of this idea of workforce housing. And I heard the question of, could that deed restriction timeline be increased in length, that renewal concept you shared, Emily. I heard a lot of folks say they support the idea, but they don't support the changes to the height amendments. So that may be a place where the county might want to take a second look at striking that compromise, possibly. I also heard two people make public comments about more RV parks, parking places for tiny homes and things like that. So that was a theme we heard tonight as well. So I know you guys continue to look at this and continue to iterate and bring it back to us. So I just want to echo my appreciations and thought I would share a couple of those summary thoughts. That's it for me. With that, our information item on this topic is complete. And the last item on our agenda tonight is to elevate future agenda items. I will just flag that I heard from Billy Johnson to talk about sidewalks and plowing as a future agenda item at the start of this meeting. And from Regina on parking on both sides of the road being an issue in Kings Beach. So I would elevate those two things as potential future items.
Excuse me, does the public get to come back and comment on?
We don't typically have public comment on future agenda items, but.
May I address the board?
Go for it.
Thank you. I want you to know that I understand when you said the 15 comments, I understand the money interest that was here tonight because it affects them monetarily. But a lot of them don't live here and they don't drive these streets like I do. And they're not going to be affected by what's going to happen directly. And if you live here and you live in the North Shore, you understand there's a problem getting to Kings Beach and going from Tahoe City to Incline, let's say. That problem is going to become much worse if we continue down this track of not looking at what we're doing to our communities.
So Regina, I thought your public comment was going to be on future agenda items.
No,
We've closed our
it's
public
on-
comment for the
no, it's on
information
this.
item now.
I thought we were allowed to come back and make a comment on this.
I was soliciting, we were on to our next agenda item, item 8, which is future agenda items now. And I thought you wanted to comment on that, but I've heard you echo a concern about the transportation, traffic
but-
and parking.
But if it's a future thing, I would like to say this, can we postpone the action on the 30th to allow more community input? Because I agree, one of the calling people who thinks that the community doesn't know about this, and that I think we need to hear more from the community on this. And I think once we do, we'll find out that this is going to have a lot more effect on the people living here, you know, than it's being given. I mean, then the concern is being given.
Thank you
I
for
would
the
like
public
to,
comment. We appreciate
if we
that.
could push that back maybe to a December meeting.
We've heard your public comment. Thank you.
Huh?
We've heard your comment. Thank you.
All right.
The other item for the future was, woman from Tahoma who asked about all the properties on the West Shore that have been purchased.
Yes.
I have a little bit to add to my comment. Can I please add that?
Oh, yeah.
There's nothing we can do legally.
It's all.
People can own a piece of property.
Billy, do you want to make one last comment on future agenda
Yeah,
items?
future agenda. You might give some thought about this, where you could solve the parking problem and your workforce housing. You kind of copy what we're seeing and doing in Sparks. So in the land that you own, these parking lots in Kings Beach, say almost 100% coverage. You could save on snow removal if you put parking garage. For instance, the first floor could be for the public. And instead of having two lanes going in and out, what you'll see in Sparks is one goes in, one comes out. Plus the movie theater, the Engine 8 winery, the breweries and stuff hide the outside of the parking lot. So you don't notice that it's a parking area, parking garage. And then you could have the workforce housing have on the second floor. You could have them park their cars and then they can live on top of it. And you guys already own it. And like I say, it's a ton of coverage.
Thank you. Any other agenda additions or future agenda items from NTRAC members? Otherwise, I see our public servant is ready to go. And I would like to wrap us up. All right, thank you, everyone. We're
You're not
adjourned.
allowed to make a little last comment here? No? Hello?
No, sorry, Tim, we had closed public comments.
Thank
I'm concerned about trash and the comment that someone else mentioned. I'd like to address that.
Okay, we can add that to a future agenda item. Thank you.
Okay. So the trash, I'm allowed to speak right now, right?
Sorry, we've concluded the meeting. We can address
Yeah.
trash in a future meeting.
Trash was significant. Just wanted to let you know. It wasn't narrow-minded, the stuff I picked up. Okay?
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah.
Next Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you too.
Next time I see you.